Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. In this world of martial arts, strength alone decides everything. Only one has reached the top here. He was Asura, who conquered the world. He came to the army of warriors alone and unarmed. Every ruler of the era fell one after another before his might. And for 7 years, Asura's great kingdom flourished. But one day, he was betrayed and subjected to the power of the manuscript. The once strongest king was bound in steel chains. Using a cruel spell, his enemies transported him to another world. Here, the system ruled, and numerical stats determined the best. Players transported here underwent hardcore trials in the magic tower. Asura refused to become one of them, and shattered the status window. In the new universe, a boy wandered, who had been summoned here 3 years ago. All that remained was the summit, but a wave of fear washed over him. Very soon he would meet Asura and mistake him for the final boss. And the mighty king would prove to the players of this world that strength isn't measured by stats. Yuda realizes with alarm that this man may truly be the last obstacle. The stranger confirms he was imprisoned here by Myowo. Yuda understands that this opponent is intelligent, which makes him even more dangerous. He steels himself and decides appearances do not matter if this is the tower's final boss. Yuda attacks first, determined to end the fight immediately. The man barely reacts to the incoming strike. Yuda follows through with a full-speed slash. His blows land, but the target hardly seems affected. Yuda commits to a finishing attack, convinced this should end it. He calls down another heavenly judgment with the holy sword of Asterion. When the strike lands, Yuda concludes the boss is weaker than expected. The man casually catches the holy blade with one hand and asks what Yuda thinks he is doing. Yuda is horrified that his ultimate attack has been stopped so effortlessly. He tries to explain it away as the privilege of a final boss while his system begins analyzing the man's weakness. The analysis completes and auto-targeting activates, giving Yuda confidence in a winning strategy. The system predicts a high chance of success, but the man simply grips the blade and studies it. With a single command, he disrupts the attack and throws the system into error. A critical failure strikes Climber's strategy, and Yuda's projected victory collapses. The success probability plummets to almost nothing as the man turns away from him. Yuda panics because his infallible analysis has never failed like this before. The truth hits him at once. The final boss is Asura himself. Asura tells the terrified boy there is no need to panic. He says Yuda is too insignificant to be worth fighting seriously. That contempt wounds Yuda's pride more than the danger itself. Asura adds that with Yuda's current level, he would not waste even a single punch on him. Instead, Asura demands to know what kind of place this is. Yuda finally understands why neither his divine attack nor his strategic system worked. He realizes this stage was designed from the start to test his own strength rather than reward his accumulated stats. Only by proving his true worth, not his numbers, can he actually harm Asura. So Yuda resolves to show that worth with his own power. He activates his unique skill Chosen Hero, temporarily maximizing all of his stats. Empowered to the system's absolute limit, he launches himself at Asura. He attacks with everything the boosted body can produce. The system displays Yuda at level 99 with every major stat capped at 999. Asura reads those numbers with open confusion. Then he scorns the idea of boasting about strength through such pathetic figures. To him, a world that discusses power through blue windows and numbers is disgusting. He decides the nature of this place no longer matters. What matters is that he will fix this corrupted world from the ground up. Yuda roars and swings with all his enhanced might. Asura counters by targeting the blue status window itself rather than the attack. He unleashes a technique meant to destroy the system behind Yuda's power. The blow tears through the interface and the space around it. Yuda screams as the foundation of his strength is ripped apart. His status window shatters like glass. The system reports catastrophic damage. Yuda is thrown from the tower's upper reaches as he realizes the impossible is happening. One error after another announces that his stored stats are gone, recovery has failed, and the system is shutting down. Asura tells him to look carefully and understand the lesson. He declares that true strength cannot be measured by numbers and that Yuda's entire numbers game ends here. Broken and falling, Yuda can only gasp in shock. Reduced to level 1, he bitterly admits that he was wrong. His thoughts return to the day, 3 years earlier, when he was first summoned to the mysterious tower. He remembers climbing with many companions before losing them one by one. In the end, he alone survived. Back in that memory, he asks Nova whether conquering the tower can truly send him home. He confesses how strange it is to risk everything on a promise while knowing nothing about the dangers ahead. Nova admits that returning home may indeed be impossible, but she reminds him that Goddess Ashwa said everything in the tower has a purpose. Because of that, she believes Yuda's journey must hold precious meaning. In the present, Asura repeats that these empty number games are finished. Yuda lies shattered beneath the falling debris, left with only that terrible realization. Kim Yuda, still only level 1, realizes too late that he has made a fatal mistake. Cornered in a ruined tower by a terrifying martial artist, he desperately tries to call up the familiar system for help. When even his inventory and quest functions fail to appear, he is forced to face the possibility that the status system itself is gone. The idea of the system rebooting or disappearing entirely shatters his confidence, because he thought such a thing could never happen. His enemy mocks him for still clinging to those numbered game-like delusions instead of escaping reality. The man coldly reveals that the blue windows Yuda relied on will never appear again. With his last source of power stripped away, Yuta drops all pride and begs to be spared. The warrior refuses to kill someone too weak to be worth fighting, but he does not offer comfort either. Instead, he demands an explanation of this place, turning Yuta from prey into an unwilling guide. He presses further, asking what must be done to return to his original world. That phrase makes Yuta suspect the man may be another outsider like himself, yet he can only admit that he also does not know how to go home. All Yuta knows is the rule he has been following. The only apparent way back is to clear the final stage. The warrior is baffled by the strange game terminology and demands a clearer answer. Yuta realizes just how alien this man is to the system's logic and struggles to make himself understood. Trying to simplify things, he prepares to explain the tower in plain terms. He finally states the core idea: to escape, the entire tower must be cleared. The man confirms the meaning and learns that every floor, from bottom to top, must be completed without leaving anything unfinished. Yuta adds that if the man is truly a player too, he should just start with quests and work upward. The warrior instantly twists that advice into brute logic and declares he will simply crush the tower itself. Yuta panics and tries to stop him, realizing far too late that the man took his words literally. Ignoring the warning, the martial artist unleashes a devastating strike into the tower's foundation. The entire structure begins to explode apart under the force of his barehanded attack. Yuta can only stare in disbelief as the impossible destruction unfolds before him. As the tower collapses, he screams that destroying the building was never what clearing it meant, and the system immediately flags the act as an abnormal catastrophe. The tower continues to break apart in a chain of violent collapse. Yuta is thrown through the falling wreckage, horrified by the monster he has unleashed. Watching a man tear down a tower with his fists alone convinces him he is dealing with something beyond reason. In the middle of the chaos, Yuta suddenly spots Nova and cries out to her. Nova recognizes him at once and rushes in without hesitation. She catches him before he can be crushed or lost in the collapse. Relieved and emotional, Yuta asks where she has been, while Nova apologizes for being late because she went to retrieve his sword. Nova cuts the reunion short and urgently tells him they must leave immediately because something much worse is about to happen. Yuta, still reeling from the destruction around them, cannot imagine what could be worse. As they move through the ruins, strange purple distortions begin tearing open the air around them. The system reports illegal access as a dark void forms amid the wreckage. That void starts deleting the destroyed tower's data, turning the collapse into a digital purge. Yuta and Nova stop to watch the impossible phenomenon swallow the remains. He realizes the debris is being sucked into the hole, though he has no idea what it truly is. He understands only one thing: if they are caught in it, they are finished. The system warns that its trash can is nearly full and that undeletable data is beginning to leak back out. At the center of the distortion, the martial artist stands unharmed as purple energy surges around him. He notices the disturbance but remains more curious than alarmed. Even after feeling something strange underfoot, he dismisses it as nothing important. Since no immediate consequence appears, he assumes the tower has truly been cleared. Yuta desperately tries to correct him, insisting that this was never the intended meaning of clearing the tower. He warns that raw destruction without understanding could trigger something disastrous. Before he can finish, a violent purple beam erupts from the leaking data and slams into the battlefield. Yuta barely reacts in time as the new threat announces itself through sheer force. The martial artist briefly thinks a worthy successor may have appeared at last. Yuta sees the energy strike and realizes the situation has spiraled far beyond his control. What emerges is not a successor but an unwelcome intruder, a woman the warrior instantly recognizes. For the first time, the martial artist is visibly shaken. He identifies the woman as Myeowol, someone tied deeply to his past. She coolly asks whether he is the arrogant fool who destroyed her tower. His anger ignites at once. He charges her in fury, accusing her of hiding here and demanding to know how she dared do this to him. Myeowol answers his rage with a casual gesture. With a single motion, she slams him into the ground and halts his assault effortlessly. Yuta can only shout in shock as the man who seemed invincible is overpowered in an instant. Myeowol repeats her question, making clear she expects an answer, not defiance. She wants confirmation that he is the one who destroyed the tower. Yuta is stunned that anyone could subdue that monster of a man so easily. He begins to suspect this woman may be the goddess Asura that Nova once mentioned. The warrior studies the force pinning him and realizes it is unlike anything he knew from the Myeowol of his memory. He concludes that although she resembles the woman he knew, her power is something entirely different. Still, the way she speaks convinces him she is indeed the one responsible for building the tower and the system around it. He demands to know whether the numbered games and blue windows were also her doing. Yuta blurts out that he followed her rules exactly and cleared everything just as instructed. He accuses her of creating both the tower and the system that trapped him. The warrior, consumed by his own grievance, demands that she return him to his rightful kingdom. Myeowol's amused smile shows she is not threatened by either accusation. She openly laughs at how little they understand her design. Then she dismisses the very premise Yuta believed in, asking who told him that clearing a tower would send him home. She tells them to destroy towers or stat windows as much as they like, because those things were never the true point. What she really wants is everything she created destroyed, and only then will she send Yuta back to his world. To make that possible, she begins restoring discarded data and manufacturing dummy players from the system's trash. Yuta stares in horror as the battlefield fills with purple light and reconstructed forms. The leaked data resolves into the faces of people he once knew, people who should have been dead. Mule reveals the cruel truth. The towers he must destroy still exist everywhere in this world. Her words expand the scale of his burden from one tower to countless towers spread across the land. Refusing to accept her control, Yuta launches himself at her with his sword blazing. He strikes with everything he has, trying to cut her down before she can say more. Mule blocks the attack with a shimmering purple barrier and barely seems inconvenienced. She mocks his desperate assault as worthless trash. Around her, more restored figures arm themselves and prepare to move. She repeats that the towers he must destroy remain, now backed by an army of reconstructed players. The dead gather in ranks around her, transformed into obedient remnants of the system. She takes pleasure in reminding Yuta that this world is filled with such towers in overwhelming numbers. Yuta watches one of the restored figures step forward and realizes the nightmare is becoming personal. The resurrected players begin speaking with fragments of old purpose, as if their past selves are echoing through them. Mule insists that no matter what power Yuta has, the world's balance cannot be overturned so easily. Faced with the army she has raised, Yuta is forced back into a defensive stance. Even so, he keeps pressing his attack against Mule, unwilling to surrender. She continues to stop him effortlessly, her barrier turning his fury aside. To her, his resistance is still just another piece of refuse to be managed. Yuta breaks down in outrage, demanding to know why his dead comrades are standing here as enemies. He remembers them as companions who risked their lives beside him to climb the tower, not disposable tools. He accuses Mule of dragging them into the tower only to exploit and discard them. She answers by casually flinging him away, showing how little his anger matters to her. Mule admits the obvious. To her, they were only pieces needed to complete her perfect world. She explains that the world she created is still unstable and that she needs Yuta's power to finish it. The quest and tower climb were never salvation, only a mechanism she designed to cultivate him for her own purpose. Realizing how thoroughly he was used, Yuta feels he has no strength left to oppose her. Mule moves to erase him from the board entirely, addressing him only as a player and not as a person. Yuta curses himself, crushed by guilt for ever entering the tower at all. He spirals into regret, convinced that his weakness and ignorance led everyone to this fate. He thinks that if he had been stronger or wiser, he could have killed Mule before any of this happened. Mule notices a sudden change before she can finish him. The martial artist bursts back into the fight and drives her away with a violent counterattack. For once, Mule is caught off guard. The warrior admits he underestimated Yuta, because the boy's rage has finally become useful. He claims the right to kill Mule himself and resents anyone else touching his prey first. Then he turns to Yuta with unexpected approval, saying the boy's courage is admirable even if he is still too early in his growth. He declares that the one destined to take Mule's head is not Yuta, but himself. He proves it by slamming another crushing blow down onto her. Standing over her, he proclaims himself king with renewed arrogance. Even while being choked, Mule praises the sheer power he can wield without relying on the system. But she refuses to let that power run free and binds him again with her strange authority. The warrior mistakes the restraint for another underhanded trick and grows even more enraged. Mule uses the moment to entrust him with a new mission: conquer every tower in this world. She promises to wait for him at the highest point of the world, turning his hatred into a path she wants him to follow. As she vanishes into purple light, she leaves him with that challenge instead of a final battle. The scene shifts to the deeper truth behind her ambition. She wants every country in the world conquered as part of her design. Left behind in the ruins, the warrior cannot stop comparing her to the Mule he once knew. He bitterly questions why that woman sent him to a place like this at all. Before he can dwell on it, one of the restored players attacks Yuta. Yuta barely manages to block the strike with the sword Nova recovered for him. He desperately calls the attacker by name and begs his former comrade to recognize him as Kim Yuta. Nova warns him that recognition will not help, because these figures are only replaying old memories, not truly alive. Yuta still cannot accept that answer and clings to the hope that his comrades remain somewhere inside them. The warrior cuts in, asking why Yuta is hesitating in the middle of battle. He knocks the attacker down and insists they have no time to waste fighting cannon fodder. His priority is now clear. He wants Yuta to guide him to the remaining towers so he can destroy them all. Yuta refuses to move on so easily, because the enemies before them are the very comrades he lost. The warrior scoffs at that sentiment and asks whether these things truly look like comrades anymore. He dismisses them as nothing more than vengeful spirits of the dead, clinging to scraps of hatred. When Yuta still hesitates, the warrior abandons him emotionally and decides he will hunt Mule alone if necessary. The restored dead descend on him from all sides, trying to stop his advance. Even without his full power, he tears through them in a blur of brutal strikes. He laughs at the ghosts for daring to block a king's path. Deciding they are beneath his time, he prepares a single overwhelming blow to wipe them all out at once. He unleashes a devastating Fist King Asura technique that blasts through the entire group. When the dust settles, he remains standing alone amid the wreckage. Only then does he realize something is wrong inside himself. His internal energy is gone, as if Mule sealed his dantian. Instead of despairing, he finds the challenge entertaining and takes it as a personal insult. He vows that even stripped of his inner power, no one will be able to stop him. The surviving restored players continue to close in despite the massacre. He answers by hurling them aside with raw physical force alone. As bodies fly, he reaffirms his pride that he remains the strongest even without martial arts. Facing the next wave of dead, he decides it is finally time to loosen up and fight seriously. A lone fighter devastates a swarm of dummy players, blasting them apart in front of the surviving crowd. Yuda realizes the man is monstrously strong, capable of taking on the entire horde by himself. But even that overwhelming power may not be enough to end the crisis. The fallen dummies begin regenerating, turning the battle into a war of attrition. Yuda understands that if this drags on, even that monster of a man could eventually wear down. Driven by guilt and urgency, Yuda decides he has to step in and help. Nova immediately stops him and tells him to calm down. She warns that with his stats gone, forcing more power from the holy sword could destroy his body and kill him. Yuda admits he knows the risk, but he cannot stand aside any longer. A dying voice pulls him back to the promise of climbing the tower together, sharpening his resolve. He drives the holy sword down and unleashes another desperate burst of power. Yuda accepts that if he gives up now, he will never avenge the comrades he lost. He swears that no matter what happens, he will find the woman responsible for what was done to them. Before he can act on that vow, the long-haired martial artist cuts through the dummies and reaches him. Instead of helping directly, the man orders Yuda to stand his ground and keep drawing the enemies toward himself. He explains the plan in game terms, using Yuda as bait to hold the dummies' attention. The martial artist obeys only grudgingly, furious at being ordered around by someone he considers beneath him. Yuda realizes the tactic is working as the entire mob shifts its focus onto the martial artist. Seeing the opening, he prepares to strike while the enemies are distracted. Meanwhile, two corrupted players watch the battle from the sidelines, waiting for their own chance. Yuda apologizes to his dead companions for what he is about to do. He vows that even if he cannot claim revenge himself, he will at least secure it for them. Calling on the holy sword of Asterion, he invokes heavenly judgment. A pillar of divine light crashes down with overwhelming force. The martial artist watches the attack with amused contempt rather than concern. When the light fades, Yuda collapses from the strain, and the martial artist remarks that he was useful after all. Yuda tries to speak, but the man cuts him off with a cold reminder. He declares that Yuda will not be the one to kill the woman they both seek, because that right belongs to him. As Yuda loses consciousness, the martial artist catches him before he hits the ground. Still carrying him, the man mocks Yuda as worthless for daring to command him twice. Yet Yuda's defiance has entertained him enough to soften his mood. He offers a twisted reward. If Yuda ever surpasses him, he will allow him the chance to kill that woman. With that challenge hanging over him, the martial artist departs from the ruined battlefield. Elsewhere, someone steps onto a stone outcrop deep in the wilderness. A masked figure in fur and antlers stands revealed, watching from above. The mask's eye glows with ominous power, hinting at hidden intent. The story shifts to a remote canyon and waterfall far from the battlefield. There, the martial artist sits beneath the falls in meditation, training his body and mind. He suddenly senses something wrong. In an instant, he bursts from the waterfall with explosive force. He confirms his suspicion that his dantian has been sealed, and he can no longer feel his internal energy. Rather than panic, he treats the sabotage as a bold provocation. Seeing Yuda lying nearby with the holy sword cast aside, he decides he has no choice but to involve him. He kicks Yuda awake and demands to know how long he plans to keep lying there. When Yuda is sent flying, the martial artist watches without sympathy. Yuda scrambles up and accuses him of finally showing his true colors as a brute. The martial artist dismisses the complaint and says he has no time to spar, because he must destroy the towers immediately. He orders Yuda to get up and come with him at once. Yuda refuses, arguing that hunting the woman matters more than smashing towers. The martial artist explodes in anger at Yuda's failure to grasp the obvious. He reveals his belief that the woman must be hiding inside one of the towers, because this entire world is made from structures she created. To him, the solution is simple: destroy every tower until she is exposed and can be killed. Yuda is left thinking the man has completely lost his mind. Nova quietly warns Yuda that this man is far too dangerous to stay near. She points out that he casually shattered Yuda's stat window, proving he can tamper with the system itself. The martial artist overhears the whispering and demands to know what they are plotting. He claims he does not enjoy traveling with them either and only tolerated Yuda because his swordsmanship seemed useful. Then he points out that Yuda is chasing the same woman, making their goals effectively aligned. He adds that with their weak bodies, they have no hope of catching her alone. So he declares that from now on, he will strengthen their bodies himself. Their destination becomes clear as a strange tower rises ahead in the forest. After a punishing journey, they finally arrive at it. The martial artist immediately wonders whether this is one of the woman's towers. He notes that Yuda has grown quickly over the past few days. With that improved physique, he judges Yuda might now be of some minor use. Nova, now transformed into a muscular adult disciple, gratefully credits everything to her master's training. The martial artist praises her talent, and says she might have mastered internal energy with more time, while she insists all her progress came from him. Even so, he is irritated that Yuda still has not arrived. Watching his own servant surpass Yuda only deepens his contempt for him. Yuda finally staggers into view, barely upright and begging for a moment to recover. He curses the insane training that forced him to run while carrying a massive log. Yuda realizes in horror that this has turned into a brutal boot camp. He is even more disturbed by Nova's complete personality shift, but he is too exhausted to keep thinking about it. At last his body gives out entirely in front of the martial artist. The man sneers that Yuda only barely managed to catch up. Then his attention shifts to the tower itself, which looks even stranger than the one he destroyed before. Nova asks whether they are going inside, but there is no visible entrance. The martial artist answers that an entrance is unnecessary. He decides the simplest answer is to destroy the tower where it stands. Nova enthusiastically encourages him to smash it in a single blow. Yuda, alarmed, begs them to stop and think before doing something reckless. His warning comes too late, and the tower reacts with a fatal error instead of collapsing. A violent purple force erupts from the structure and seizes the martial artist. The tower forcibly transports all of them into its interior. As they are dragged through the vortex, Yuda berates the martial artist for causing exactly the disaster he warned about. They emerge inside a ruined modern city rather than a fantasy tower interior. Purple energy crackles through the streets as the new environment stabilizes around them. The martial artist lands first and is disgusted by the strange buildings surrounding him. Nova mourns the loss of her temporary muscles while Yuda struggles to understand where they have been sent. Seeing the cityscape, Yuda wonders if he has somehow returned to his original world. Nova urgently points him towards something ahead. The streets are littered with bodies, and Yuda realizes they look like dead players. The sheer number of corpses convinces him this cannot be the world he once knew, leaving him unsure what place this really is. Then a dark command rings out, calling something to rise. Purple soul flames begin pouring out of the dead bodies. The martial artist notices the phenomenon and watches closely. He realizes the souls of the dead are gathering together in one place. Instead of fear, he finds the spectacle intriguing. A black-haired man appears amid the purple energy and identifies the corpses as newly summoned players. He warns Yuda's group not to resist, because their struggle will change nothing. The martial artist stares him down, refusing to be intimidated. The newcomer casually shapes purple power around his hand. He declares that he himself stands at the top of this tower and summons the Spectre King. Yuda is stunned, instantly sensing that this skeletal being is on an entirely different level from anything he has faced. The Spectre King gathers destructive energy in its skull. Yuda warns the martial artist to move, but the man refuses to acknowledge the threat. He charges straight at the monster, insulted that anyone would think such a creature could endanger him. His blow smashes into the Spectre King with tremendous force. The impact tears up the street, but it still does not end the fight. The martial artist dismisses the monster as trash for surviving. The Spectre King mocks him in return, saying he dares claim the pinnacle while bringing so little power. The martial artist answers by calling the hidden master a coward for hiding behind summoned monsters. The black-haired man repeats the accusation back at him with cold amusement. He reveals that he is not alone either, standing backed by a grim reaper, a skeletal beast, and other abyssal creatures. One of those monsters decides Yuda should keep struggling instead of dying quickly. The black-haired man says he will test how long Yuda can survive. At once, the summoned horrors rush toward Yuda. The martial artist hears the word test and takes it as a personal insult. He declares that a lowly being has no right to test him. With a single motion, he slams one of the charging monsters into the ground and rejects the challenge outright. The Spectre King responds with a sinister laugh. It binds the martial artist in spectral chains to hold him in place. For the first time, the martial artist is caught off guard. The skeletal beast lunges at him while he is restrained. It crashes down in a savage attempt to crush him. Before it can finish the attack, invisible slashes rip across its face. More cuts carve through the beast as if from nowhere. The wounded monster can only sneer that the pain is trivial. The martial artist calmly begins summoning his own forces. An abyssal horde of skeleton soldiers and wraiths rises around him in answer. One of his summoned soldiers steps forward to engage. A burst of blue force erupts from the martial artist's side, blasting back the enemy swarm. A massive red demon-like ally charges into the battlefield under his command. That brute meets the skeletal beast head-on and hammers it with overwhelming physical force. At the same time, more summoned wraiths claw their way up around the martial artist, expanding his army. The martial artist is briefly puzzled by the ease with which his summons answered. Watching the black-haired man from the corner of his eye, he admits he cannot understand what he is facing. He senses no stats and no recognizable skills from this opponent at all. That only deepens the mystery of how such power is possible. The black-haired man draws twin purple blades and prepares a decisive move. He tells the martial artist there is no need for explanations because he will simply absorb his soul and learn the truth directly. He unleashes an authority called Brand of Extinction, flooding the area with annihilating purple power. Yuda and Nova can only shield themselves from the blast and watch in terror. Yuda is shaken that the martial artist is fighting this terrifying being on equal terms in a direct duel. He can no longer tell what kind of existence that black-haired man really is. Nova urges Yuda to run, convinced they are now caught between monsters beyond anything a player should be. She says the black-haired man no longer feels like a player at all. What she senses from him is closer to the divine power of goddess Asura herself. The ruined city trembles under the clash of their powers as the battle escalates. Amid the settling dust, the black-haired man steps forward and wonders whether the soul before him is finally the last one he needs. The black-haired player declares that a troublesome foe has finally been dealt with, ending his contract with goddess Asura. He immediately turns his power on the nameless player and invokes soul absorption to claim his soul. He coldly promises to put that stolen soul to use for his own ends. Before he can settle the matter, a violent force interrupts and drives the scene into chaos. The black-haired player realizes the mention of a goddess points to the woman who sealed his dantian. The long-haired warrior confirms it is that very woman, and his hostility sharpens at once. The black-haired player admits he had been searching for her anyway, so this encounter suits him. The warrior warns that if he values his life, he will reveal where Ashwa is. Instead of backing down, the black-haired player accepts that the fight was never going to end peacefully. He summons a storm of spectral swords and makes it clear that the one dying here will be his opponent. He finishes the threat by naming the warrior as the one marked for death. The swords rain down, but the warrior meets the attack head-on without flinching. He catches the assault with contempt, showing the barrage is far less dangerous than promised. With a single counter, he sends a cutting wave back across the ruined street. The black-haired player is caught off guard by how overwhelming the return strike is. The counterattack tears upward through the surroundings with destructive force. Rather than panic, the black-haired player laughs, recognizing how absurdly strong this enemy really is. The warrior finally acknowledges his strength and decides to treat him as a serious opponent. In response, the black-haired player equips the armor of Hades and arms himself for close combat. He rushes in with twin blades, trying to overwhelm the warrior before he can dominate the field again. The clash turns into a rapid exchange of sword strikes at close range. The black-haired player presses harder, determined to force the warrior to take his full attack. Even his strongest flurry fails to break through the warrior's defense. The warrior mocks him as a brat whose best effort still falls short. The black-haired player refuses to yield and launches himself back into the fight. He spins through the air for another assault, trying to create an opening from above. The warrior calmly tells him he is nowhere near enough to bridge the gap between them. He drives that point home with a crushing counterattack, asserting the difference in their power. Their collision erupts into a massive explosion that tears through the district. When the smoke clears, the black-haired player is still standing and laughing through the destruction. He praises the warrior again, but only as someone strong for the moment, not beyond him. A nearby ally prepares to speak, sensing a crucial truth behind the fight. The warrior reveals that Goddess Ashwa was the one who granted him this tower in the first place. He adds that he still has not obtained the tower's full authority. To overcome that limit, he made a contract with Ashwa to offer the souls of 10,000 players and be reborn as the tower's true successor. Now he declares that he has finally gathered every required soul. His ally realizes too late that Nova has been seized as part of that final count. He openly holds Nova in his grasp, provoking outrage from the others as they demand to know what he is doing. He dismisses their protests as irrelevant, and keeps them out of his way with brute force. A summoned brute smashes one of the would-be rescuers and leaves him coughing blood. The villain insists that trying to stop him now is pointless. Surrounded by undead and monstrous servants, he boasts that there is nothing anyone can do anymore. The system confirms his ritual has reached the final 10,000th soul and that the tower's full authority will unlock in moments. Facing him across the ruins, the warrior identifies the black-haired player as a spirit master who commands vengeful dead. He condemns those arts as the same despicable practices once used by scum in his own kingdom. Though he despises such methods, he decides the situation has gone too far and prepares to demonstrate true spirit arts. He gathers a different kind of spiritual power, announcing that he will show what real spirit arts are. That power spreads over the battlefield and reaches the separated souls of the others. The black-haired player realizes in shock that the souls he collected are being taken from him. He cannot believe such interference is even possible within the system's rules. The warrior releases the stolen souls back to their owners and orders the children to run free. He tells Nova that the next move belongs to her now. He commands her to use that restored strength to crush the wretch who captured her. The soul-bound ally is stunned as awareness and power begin returning. The injured young man realizes he is in a soul state and panics, wondering if he has died. He accuses his uncle of causing this and demands his body back. The warrior rebukes him, saying he is blaming the wrong person. He explains that the black-haired player tried to turn their souls into puppets, and that he intervened to stop it. By separating their souls from their flesh, he blocked that control and gave their bodies time to recover. He adds that he also stole back some of the souls under the villain's command, weakening him in the process. The young man notices that despite the talk of spirit arts, he himself does not feel fundamentally different. The warrior orders the restored souls to show the enemy what true spirit arts can really do. The black-haired player scoffs at the idea that losing a few souls could make him insignificant. He steps forward again, dismissing the explanation as nonsense. He argues that however the warrior stole those souls, it changes nothing important. To him, the reclaimed souls are only a tiny fraction of the army he still commands. He mocks the claim of true spirit arts, saying two people cannot possibly compare to his horde. The warrior laughs at that shallow way of measuring strength. The restored young man proves him wrong by cutting into one of the undead with sudden force. His strike lands cleanly, showing that the returned souls can now fight back. The blow tears through the monster and sends it flying apart. The black-haired player watches in disbelief as that unexpected power manifests before him. He cannot understand where such strength came from when the boy had been nearly dead moments earlier. The contradiction shakes him, because he knows the boy should have been on the verge of death. For a brief moment, the ruined city falls into tense silence around that revelation. The undead army regroups, still looming in large numbers despite the setback. One of the monsters closes in on Nova, threatening her before she fully recovers. Her companion realizes in horror that Nova still has not regained full consciousness. The creature lunges, ready to tear into her helpless soul. Nova remains dazed, unable to react in time. At the last instant, a burst of true spirit power erupts from her. That power obliterates the attacking monster in a single flash. The shockwave tears through nearby enemies and scatters the assault. Nova herself is startled by what just came out of her. Even the warrior pauses, intrigued by the unexpected response. Her companion rushes to check on her, worried but hopeful. He concludes that spirit arts really have made them stronger, though he fears the battle still cannot end well if it drags on. Meanwhile, the remaining undead mass together again, preparing another wave. The warrior studies the enemy in silence, weighing the next move. The black-haired player turns to his blue system window, relying on it as the core of his advantage. The warrior tells the others that if they want to stop him, they must first destroy that disgusting window. He admits that with his Dantian sealed he cannot use blast, so breaking it will not be simple. The young man points out that the warrior can still use spirit arts even without internal chi, so there must be another method. The warrior confirms this and explains that external chi is enough for him to work with. If there is sufficient chi in the surroundings, he can reproduce power comparable to blast, and he notes that Nova's chi is especially unusual. He abruptly asks the girl to offer her soul to him. The system immediately warns that the quest now lacks enough souls to complete the ritual. It demands more souls be acquired, exposing that the count has been disrupted. The black-haired player realizes the reclaimed souls are running the ritual, but decides he can simply gather replacements after killing the meddlers. He calls all of his souls to answer him and prepares to drown the battlefield in them. His undead army surges forward in overwhelming numbers to sweep away every enemy in sight. The warrior tells the young man they will only get one chance, and orders him to trust him completely and pour out everything he has. He instructs him to carve a path through the horde so he can reach the black-haired player. The young man agrees, not out of trust in his uncle, but because Nova and his own survival depend on it. He throws himself into the charge with all his remaining strength. Using that combined power, he unleashes a vast holy sword technique that carves a blazing horizontal path through the undead army. The black-haired player sneers that wasting so much power just to clear the army changes nothing. He insists the attack is still nowhere near enough to overcome the countless souls he has collected. But the warrior appears directly before him, proving he used the opening exactly as planned. He reveals he had been watching the villain's habit of checking the blue window every time one of his spirits died. Now that he is close enough, he channels spirit power into his fist. With Nova lending her soul, he commits to ending the matter in one decisive blow. The black-haired player realizes too late what is happening and tries to react. The warrior unleashes Fist King Asura style destruction, a catastrophic strike that smashes into the system itself. The blue status window shatters apart under the blow. The black-haired player screams that such a thing should have been impossible. He cannot accept that everything he built has been destroyed so pointlessly. As his stat window and power collapse, he feels his entire world giving way. The system enters fatal error, announces the registered soul data has been damaged, deletes all souls, and declares the succession ritual a failure. The young man falls hard to the ground as the backlash passes through him. When he rises, he realizes he has returned to his original body. He checks himself in disbelief, confirming the restoration is real. He recognizes that his body truly recovered exactly as his uncle claimed. That only deepens his awe at how far his uncle's abilities and knowledge seem to reach. Nearby, the black-haired player breaks down in denial and refuses to accept what just happened. He begs for the outcome to be false, insisting it cannot end this way. The warrior cuts through the excuses and blames him directly for the disaster. Driven mad by failure, the black-haired player claims he only pursued the ritual to save his destroyed world. His words trigger a memory of ordinary life before all of this, when he was just another young man in a city. In that memory, he notices something strange and begins to look up from his routine. He sees multiple purple portals opening across the sky, heralding catastrophe. The memory leaves his present self shaken as the horror resurfaces. He remembers the city being consumed by fire, collapse, and mass destruction. He remembers helpless survivors impaled and dying amid the ruins. He remembers bodies strewn everywhere, proof that countless people were lost. He remembers himself kneeling in that devastated world, powerless before the aftermath. That memory still fills him with terror and grief. Then he recalls reaching the top of the tower and standing before a radiant divine figure. Back in the present, the others are confused by his sudden talk of a destroyed world. The restored young man asks how another player's world could have ended if they all came from different worlds in the same way. The black-haired player explains that when he entered the tower as a player, his world had already been doomed by a monster wave. He says he wanted to save that world at any cost and believed his own power would be enough. Climbing the tower with the sole aim of saving everyone, he eventually learned a terrible truth. The conqueror of the tower is granted the power to create an entirely new world. The young man repeats the revelation in shock, realizing the scale of what that means. The black-haired player admits he used that power to try to recreate his ruined world inside the tower exactly as it had been before destruction. He insists everything he did came from the desire to save and protect his people with the strength he had earned. Even so, he cannot let go of his rage over losing that chance. He blames the others for ruining everything and claims the quest would have succeeded if they had not interfered. The warrior rejects that self-justification outright and condemns him as a coward hiding behind excuses. A furious accuser tears into the young man, saying his claim of wanting to save everyone was always a lie because he fled when the world was falling apart. The attack continues by mocking his dream of remaking the world as a hollow obsession with power rather than a genuine act of salvation. The long-haired warrior dismisses the idea of rebuilding a world inside the tower as meaningless fantasy with no real value. Seeing the young man lost in grief and delusion, the warrior decides to force reality on him. He bluntly declares that the young man only wanted to escape his weakness and indulge in pretending to be a hero. Unable to bear the accusation, the young man explodes in rage. He throws himself forward in a desperate attack, trying to silence the man by force. The warrior meets the charge head-on and crushes him with a brutal counterblow. The impact tears through the ruined ground and sends destructive force surging away from the clash. Even while coughing blood, the young man insists that he truly chose this path to save everyone. His mind flashes back to the moment he cleared the entire tower and was acknowledged as its conqueror. A woman in white offered him one reward: return to the instant before his world's destruction and face the monster wave. That option would let him fight for real and save his original world. But she also tempted him with another path: inherit the tower's power and recreate the world he had lived in inside the tower. She forced him to choose between harsh reality and a fabricated salvation. She framed the first choice as returning to endless war as a hero against the monster wave. She framed the second as becoming the savior of a desired world created within the tower. After wavering, he finally made his decision. He chose to seize the tower's power and somehow use it to save his own world. The moment he chose, the tower system began collapsing and announced that all data inside would be erased. Elsewhere in the crumbling tower, Nova and the small spirit realized the entire structure was coming apart. Nova panicked that they would die with the tower if they did not act immediately. As the ruins shook, the defeated young man began speaking with sudden clarity, recalling something Ashwa once told him. He remembered that all towers in this world are ultimately linked by a single path. Nova admitted he did not understand what that path truly was. Still, the young man believed that reaching its end might allow someone to meet Goddess Ashwa. He urged them to seek that path if they truly wanted to find her. Nova demanded to know what he meant and why he was revealing this now. The young man answered that buried memories had resurfaced and finally made him understand himself. He accepted the warrior's judgment that he had been a coward escaping reality while intoxicated by the role of hero. He concluded that admitting it changed nothing, because he had already thrown away his chance to return to his original world. With only emptiness left around him, he confessed that he no longer had any reason to live. He opened a portal behind them and ordered the others to leave before the collapsing tower erased even that last exit. The warrior understood that the young man intended to stay behind and accepted his choice without contempt. As he turned to leave, the warrior promised that if he ever met the woman responsible, he would settle the young man's grievance too. Nova protested desperately, arguing that the young man could still come with them and search for Ashwa as well. The warrior shut him down, insisting that a loser defeated in a life-or-death battle had already been shown mercy by being allowed to choose where to die. To him, sparing the defeated man's life and honoring that final choice was mercy enough. Nova still hesitated, but the spirit warned that there was no time left. The tower's destruction accelerated toward total collapse. Nova knew the danger, yet he still could not accept abandoning someone to die. He rushed back, hoisted the broken young man onto his back, and declared that he could not give up on a person's life. The spirit was stunned by Nova's refusal to leave him behind. Carrying him through the falling ruins, Nova challenged his despair and asked what he thought he was doing by surrendering now. The young man repeated that leaving the tower would still leave him with no reason to live. Nova answered that reasons to live can appear later, but only if a person keeps living. He begged him not to throw his life away just because he could not see hope yet. Moved by that stubborn kindness, the young man asked Nova's name even as the portal raged ahead of them. Nova snapped back that his name was Kim Yuta and demanded to know if that satisfied him. The young man repeated the name, almost amused by how ordinary it sounded. When Nova asked for his name in return, he answered that he was Lee Chanwoo, and Nova laughed at the plainness of it. With that small human exchange between them, Lee Chanwoo made one final request. He pressed the glowing power into Nova's hands and pleaded with him to use it for the right cause. Nova recoiled at the sudden transfer and angrily demanded why Lee was forcing such a burden on him. Lee explained that once he left the tower without the system, his body would soon cease to exist anyway. As his form began to break apart, he called out to Yuta one last time. He ordered Yuta to return to his original world no matter what. Yuta screamed Lee Chanwoo's name as the power blazed in his hand. The system announced the final second before complete collapse and total deletion of the tower's data. The tower was swallowed by a catastrophic surge as its destruction became irreversible. A final notice confirmed that Tower 312 had been completely destroyed. Watching from her throne, the white-clad woman fell silent at the outcome. Then she smiled and dismissed the loss as only one tower, taunting the player to try harder next time. Outside, the tower disintegrated into light and debris until nothing remained. Yuta and the warrior watched the last fragments vanish, realizing the entire place had truly disappeared. Holding the power Lee left behind, Yuta wondered if he had already been too late to save him the moment the stat window shattered. He remembered the rule that once a stat window breaks, the player's physical body also dies. That made his own survival a mystery, because by that logic he should have perished as well. He began to suspect that some remnant of the system's power still remained inside him. The warrior noticed Yuta brooding and casually asked if he was upset over the dead spirit master. He guessed that Lee Chanwoo's death was what weighed on Yuta. The warrior mocked him for being more sentimental than he looked, and Yuta snapped back without denying it. Yuta admitted that Lee had been a villain, yet his end felt bitter, especially after entrusting him with that power and asking him to return home. Not understanding what the gift truly was, Yuta offered it to the warrior first. For reasons he could not fully explain, Giving it to the warrior felt like the right thing to do. The warrior sensed the same woman's chi within the object and realized it might help loosen the seal on his dantian. Yuta hoped that meant the warrior would regain all his lost strength, but the answer was more restrained. The warrior said the power resembled hers, yet it was still far weaker than the force that had sealed him. Yuta finally asked what a dantian actually was. The warrior brushed aside the question of the dantian itself, and insisted that he was already strong even without understanding it. He explained that what he had been using until now was merely external arts, nothing more than pure physical force. Yuta was horrified to realize that all the warrior's monstrous feats had been done without internal power at all. The warrior added that if his dantian were restored, he could use internal energy as well. He described internal energy as chi flowing through the body to produce power beyond mere physical techniques. To Yuta, it sounded like some kind of magic. That thought made him realize the warrior had been overwhelming even without any stat window to support him. He wondered how absurd the warrior's numbers would have been if such strength had ever been measured in stats. When the spirit asked what he was thinking, Yuta admitted he had been imagining the warrior's impossible stat values. The warrior overheard and scolded him for still judging strength by windows and numbers. Yuta and the spirit could only whisper to each other that the man was truly a monster. Still confused, Yuta asked what strength really meant to him. The warrior rejected the question as foolish only because the answer should have been obvious. He began defining strength in his own terms. To him, strength is born from blood and sweat. It comes from relentless training and effort poured into obtaining it. He explained that throwing 1,000 punches matters less than the will behind every single one. So he denied that he was weaker than anyone who simply trained more by count alone. What mattered was how fiercely he yearned for power with each strike. In other words, true strength is putting one's whole heart into achieving what one desires. The strength earned through that process alone is real. To prove the point, he unleashed a punch so violent it tore the air apart. The blast carved a devastating path straight through the landscape. Yuta and the spirit could only stare in stunned silence at the scale of it. The warrior calmly asked if they understood now. Then he turned back to the glowing power and admitted the real problem was figuring out how to use it. Even with the prize in hand, he was frustrated by how little he understood about it. His irritation sharpened into anger as he cursed the woman who had created this mess and the unknown rules surrounding her power. The peaceful clearing suddenly felt tense, as if something else had entered the field. The warrior asked whether Yuta was seeing this strange phenomenon for the first time, unlike him, whose stats had once been shattered before he cleared a tower. Yuta admitted he had believed everything would end once he climbed the tower, but it clearly had not. The warrior seemed to grasp something from that confession. He wondered aloud whether another person connected to this power might already know the truth. Yuta was startled by the sudden shift in his tone. The warrior guessed that whoever was watching also coveted the same power. He challenged the hidden presence to stop lurking and show itself. A new figure stepped into the clearing in answer to that demand. Yuta first mistook the antlered, skull-masked stranger for a surviving monster, but noticed the absence of the usual red aura. The warrior demanded the stranger's identity. The masked figure answered by drawing a massive axe and advancing without a word. The warrior welcomed the attack with delighted confidence and invited the stranger to come at him directly. The antlered fighter lunged in with murderous speed. He swung the axe in a heavy killing arc aimed straight at the warrior. The warrior slipped inside the attack and countered with a crushing blow. The impact launched the attacker skyward before the warrior smashed him back down. The stranger answered from the air by invoking an axe technique. He gathered force for a far more dangerous follow-up while the warrior waited below. The technique crashed down as earth splitter, blasting the ground apart in a violent eruption. When the dust cleared, blood marked the battlefield, showing the strike had drawn real damage. Yet the warrior had caught the axe itself and stopped the attack with his bare hand. He praised the attacker's stance, treating the exchange like a test rather than a threat. The masked stranger remained silent for a beat. Then the warrior pressed his bloodied hand against the weapon and prepared another counter. His sudden retaliation knocked the attacker off balance and broke the rhythm of the assault. Closing in, the warrior declared that such a level of attack was nowhere near enough to threaten him. He followed with a brutal strike to the skull mask. The blow detonated the ground again and blasted the stranger backward. The warrior coolly told him to try harder. From the smoke, the hidden enemy's hatred surfaced, swearing that he could not forgive this. A dark silhouette with burning eyes emerged, vowing that he would never forgive them. Yuta recognized the voice and realized with shock who it had to be. The stranger tore away the disguise enough to reveal himself as the blonde tower master, raging that they had destroyed his tower. Yuta could only stammer that they had indeed destroyed a tower, though not knowing it belonged to him. The spirit tried to soften the blame, but the excuse only deepened the tower master's fury. He trembled with rage at their attempt to dodge responsibility. Calling them liars, he charged again and insisted he had personally seen them destroy the tower. He demanded to know their true goal and why they had done it. The warrior finally answered with cold contempt. He said that because of this man, he had spent 2 full years trapped and wandering a desolate world. He declared that without that interference, he would have returned to his original world long ago. Then he dismissed the tower master's outrage entirely, saying a loser has no right to complain so much after being beaten. Kim Yuta is caught off guard by something he did not expect. The tense moment gives way to a new scene under a rising sun. Realizing he misjudged her, Yuta apologizes to Kalina for nearly harming her. Kalina, still kneeling, accepts the apology with equal sincerity. Yuta tries to ease the awkwardness and asks her to stand, treating the clash as an understandable mistake. Once she rises, he admits her climb to the top of the tower makes no sense given her apparent stats. He asks to inspect Kalina's status window again, and she agrees. Kalina opens her status window for him without hesitation. The numbers confirm the impossible. Despite reaching level 86, every basic stat remains at 1 while tens of millions of points were never assigned. Yuta realizes she cleared the tower by leveling alone without ever spending her stat points, a feat he thought impossible. That absurdity makes him wonder whether Kalina might be on the same level as the mysterious powerhouse he already knows, so he asks what she found at the tower's summit. Kalina says the top was empty, with not even ordinary monsters in sight. Instead of enemies, she saw a message declaring her stats insufficient, and then the tower itself began to disappear. Yuta concludes the tower's error was likely caused by Ashwa, the being behind the system. Kalina is startled when he names Ashwa directly. Yuta explains that Ashwa is the entity that granted them stat windows and power, and that they are pursuing it to return to their original world. Kalina begins to suspect the man she met before may be chasing that same being as well. When she wonders what that man is doing now, the story cuts to him gathering energy in seclusion. Yuta can only answer with uneasy uncertainty. The man's meditation erupts into a violent surge of power. The energy condenses into a blazing core above him. That power then shoots upward in a catastrophic pillar. Far away, Yuta and his companions are forced to shield themselves from the sudden shockwave. The surge also reveals the man's sealed state, with chains of power binding him from within. Yuta recognizes that the man is merely recovering his dantian, but is baffled by how excessive the display is. The sheer intensity leaves Yuta rattled. At the same time, the man is struck by a headache as unfamiliar memories begin flooding in. Those memories show a city and cathedral being obliterated. The destruction spreads across the entire settlement in a rain of impacts. Amid the devastation, a radiant figure appears in the sky. A white-haired woman in those memories screams in despair. Yuta realizes the memories feel strangely familiar, especially one face within them. The man emerges from the surge with fragments of those memories still lingering. He notes that his internal energy has started moving again, though only barely. To fully unseal his dantian, he decides he needs far more of this power. Remembering the woman who sealed him, he concludes that the successor's power is the key to breaking that seal. That realization amuses him. He declares that he has finally found a way to restore his strength completely. With renewed purpose, he orders Yuta to hurry to the next tower. Yuta hesitates and points out that not every tower may even contain a successor's power. He warns that some towers may not have chosen a successor yet, but Yuta suddenly insists he already knows where the next source lies, and Nova is stunned by his certainty. The certainty shocks him as much as anyone, as if the answer surfaced from somewhere beyond his own thoughts. Nova begins glowing with a new energy that mirrors the strange familiarity in Yuta's mind. She admits she does not understand what changed, but she can now feel the world itself more clearly. That awareness lets her sense the powers woven through this world, both great and small. Using that perception, Nova says she knows where their targets are heading and offers to guide them. She promises to lead them to where the successor's power lies. Yuta accepts her guidance and commits to their next destination. The story shifts to a dark castle in the demon realm. Inside, the halls are quiet as someone approaches the throne room. Measured footsteps announce the arrival of a subordinate. An elf-like retainer enters before his superiors. He reports that the Bloodwind Fields are paying their monthly tribute as ordered. He adds that the Dark Mine is also delivering its scheduled gold. The Horned Ruler on the throne listens with interest. Pleased by the income, he laughs that his goal of amassing 1,000,000 coins is getting closer. The retainer, Graydon, is then told he may rest after his work. Before leaving, Graydon mentions one unusual development. The throne room's mood shifts as the ruler asks what it is. Graydon reports that a patrol on the eastern wall discovered an unidentified group. Though not fully confirmed, he says his own deduction points to a specific conclusion. He announces that a new hero party seems to have appeared in the demon realm. The Horned Ruler is surprised that another group would still come after all this. He quickly dismisses the threat and invites them to come if they dare. At that very moment, the supposed intruders are already inside his castle, leaving him stunned. A system message reveals that Kalina's stats have been verified and the code has approved a normal transfer. The party is transported directly into tower number 008, bypassing the usual climb and arriving inside at once. Yuta jokes about how convenient the system is for people who possess stats, while the martial artist scorns the whole mechanic. The martial artist dismisses the delay as pointless because restoring his dantian matters more than anything else. He immediately asks where the successor is. Nova points them toward the source of the successor's power. She reveals that it is located inside the castle ahead. Elsewhere, the kingdom publicly condemns hero Evan for failing once again to subdue the demon king. An enraged elder demands to know how much longer the kingdom must wait for results. Evan brushes it off, claiming they nearly succeeded and only failed because their equipment broke at the last moment. He shamelessly uses that excuse to demand even better gear for the next attempt. The elder reminds him that the kingdom already provided top-tier equipment not long ago. Evan casually admits that was true, then pivots to asking for new saintesses because his divine power has weakened. The elder is disgusted by how brazenly Evan keeps exploiting the kingdom. He finally strips Evan of his title as the kingdom's hero. Then he orders Evan banished from the kingdom under armed guard. Even surrounded by spears, Evan keeps smiling and insists he has prepared a secret weapon that will change everything. The elder cuts through the act and accuses Evan of using the Demon King campaign as cover to squander the national treasury on debauchery. He warns that if Evan refuses to leave immediately, he will be executed on the spot. Evan still treats the threat lightly and boasts about how much he has done for the country. Before the confrontation can end cleanly, a violent impact shakes the hall. The guards panic as they realize something has suddenly breached the palace. The martial artist suspects this may be a raid by the Demon King's forces. Evan instantly recognizes the intruders and reveals that he can sense the successor's power coming from them. The martial artist lunges at Evan and demands he surrender that power if he wants to live. The royal guards move to suppress the attacker for causing chaos in the palace. The elder escalates matters by declaring immediate execution for insulting the royal family. The martial artist answers by knocking 2 guards away with a single punch. That effortless display makes Evan pause in surprise. The court is stunned that one blow sent royal guards flying. Evan realizes the intruder is far stronger than expected. He quickly reframes the situation and presents the intruders as the secret weapon he had been talking about. He boasts that every member of this new group surpasses ordinary top-ranked mercenaries. Evan declares that with them, he can finally subjugate Demon King Belzer. The martial artist is thrown off by hearing the Demon King's name spoken so casually in this scheme. The story briefly shifts outside as the city remains unaware of the chaos within. Evan is then shown crashing down elsewhere, as if recalling or reenacting another violent moment. The martial artist rejects Evan's grand claims as nonsense. Evan recovers easily and asks whether they are players or successors, showing he understands the system better than he first let on. Yuta starts to answer honestly but hesitates. Evan cuts off the formalities and focuses on the only thing that matters to him, their interest in the successor's power. He cheerfully claims they have come to exactly the right place and proposes they defeat the Demon King together. The martial artist shuts down the chatter and makes clear he only wants to extract the power from Evan's body. Evan is intrigued rather than frightened. He challenges the martial artist to try, pointing out that he seems very sure the power would survive forced extraction. The martial artist confirms that he intends to rip it out by force anyway. That answer shocks him because it reveals he does not know the basic rule. Evan explains that if a successor's power is taken by force, it is destroyed. He offers a bargain instead, help him clear the Demon King quest, and he will hand over his power willingly afterward. The martial artist initially dismisses the proposal as worthless. Yuta intervenes, reminding him that Lee Chanwoo's power was also transferred voluntarily rather than stolen. That detail makes Evan realize Yuta understands the system better than most. Seeing someone reasonable at last, Evan introduces himself properly and learns Yuta's name. Yuta tries to ask how Evan knows so much about successor powers, but Evan pushes the conversation forward before answering. Instead, Evan asks the martial artist whether the rest of the group will agree to the deal. Kalina admits she does not trust Evan, yet also sees that they may have little choice. The martial artist accepts only under threat, warning Evan that any trickery will get him killed instantly. Evan readily agrees and immediately shifts to practical matters like securing equipment. The scene moves to the demon realm itself, a wasteland of lava and ash. Evan recognizes it as the domain where the Demon King resides. The party takes in how vast the realm is compared with what they expected. Evan eagerly urges them onward to subjugate the Demon King. The martial artist abruptly destroys Evan's armor, refusing to let him hide behind unnecessary gear. He says equipment only gets in his way and he has no need for it. Evan reluctantly accepts the loss, though he still mourns how expensive it was. He asks whether the others also intend to fight without equipment. Kalina unexpectedly admits that she likes the idea of discarding it too. Yuta cuts off the bickering and demands to know where the Demon King actually is. Evan explains that in worlds like this, they usually have to reach the Demon King's castle before the real confrontation begins. Without warning, a battery of missiles launches toward them. The bombardment rains down over the castle grounds. The party stares up in disbelief as Yuta realizes they are being targeted by missiles. Evan protests that opening with this kind of attack is unfair even by his standards. From the castle, Belzer mocks Evan as a fool who still has not learned after repeated defeats. Belzer decides to finish Evan properly this time by unveiling his greatest creation. He activates an anti-hero fortress weapon designed specifically to erase Evan. The missiles are revealed to be firing directly from the Demon King's castle itself. The group can only stare as the absurdity of the attack sinks in. Evan keeps complaining that this kind of opening move is completely against the spirit of the fight. He finally responds by unleashing a purple energy technique of his own. Drawing on an otherworld's universal warehouse, Evan intercepts the bombardment with a massive countermeasure. After the defense goes up, he checks whether everyone survived the barrage. Yuta is amazed that Evan blocked every incoming attack at once. Even Yuta has to admit that however irritating Evan is, a successor is still a successor. The hero realizes Belzer is repeating his old pattern and may be committing fully from the very start again. He gathers his companions and warns them to listen carefully before they advance. He explains that the entire demon realm is effectively a dungeon built by the Demon King himself. That means every part of the landscape can be turned into Belzer's weapon at any moment. He stresses that even a brief lapse in caution could invite an attack from anywhere. His warning is immediately proven true when the ground erupts around the party in a sudden barrage. From afar, Belzer mocks the hero for bringing companions along once again. Belzer makes clear he has no intention of letting them approach the Demon King's castle freely. The hero answers by openly calling out Demon King Belzer. He challenges Belzer to stop hiding and face him directly if he truly deserves the title of Demon King. The hero declares that no amount of concealment will ever be enough to stop him. Belzer accepts the challenge with amused contempt. He vows to oppose the hero's will with everything he has and activates a strange system-like power. Yuta is stunned to see Belzer using something that looks exactly like a status window. That sight makes him realize Belzer may also be a player. Belzer addresses the heroes as if unveiling a special stage prepared just for them. He announces the creation of a new Demon Realm dungeon around the party. System messages confirm that a new dungeon has been added and the targets are being transported into it. The group materializes inside a gloomy stone labyrinth filled with mist and torchlight. Yuta is immediately dropped into another trap and complains that the dungeon is packed with them. He fumes that all he did was touch one brick before another hidden mechanism sprang out. Kalina cuts through the danger and remarks that the number of traps is absurd even for a dungeon. She smashes through falling debris and keeps moving despite the collapsing passage. After clearing the danger, she checks whether Yuta is still unharmed. Relieved, Yuta confirms she is safe. The two realize they have been separated from the rest of the party, and have no idea what this place really is. Yuta explains that this maze is a dungeon personally created by the Demon King. Kalina repeats the word dungeon, still unfamiliar with the concept. Yuta asks if she truly does not know it, and compares it to something commonly found in games. He explains that a dungeon is a maze-like structure filled with randomly placed monsters and traps. Kalina notes that description fits this place, but says every route she tried only led her back to the same point. That makes her wonder whether escaping the maze is even possible. Yuta decides that before anything else, they need to find Mr. and Evan. Elsewhere, Mr. keeps forcing his way through the maze, convinced he can break Belzer's trick by brute force. He punches through another wall to carve his own route. Evan can only watch in weary disbelief as Mr. keeps smashing the dungeon apart. He scolds Mr. for making the maze even harder to navigate by destroying everything. Mr. dismisses Evan's complaints and refuses to take orders from him. He insists he will find his own path no matter what Evan says. Evan gives up arguing and points out that all this destruction still sends them back to the starting point. He admits that Belzer prepared this trap far more carefully than before. Even the Pathfinder tool Evan brought is failing to reveal any route through the maze. Frustrated, he wonders if this attempt will end like the others, with the Demon King still out of reach. He concludes that if nothing changes, he cannot return to the kingdom in defeat. The small spirit presses him on why he never mentioned something important earlier. She reveals that besides Evan, there was another successor in the tower. Evan pretends not to understand what she is implying. She accuses him of already knowing that Belzer was a player just like him. She says she sensed the same successor power from Belzer as well. Evan admits she is sharper than she looks. He finally reveals that there were originally two successors in the tower, and another player stood beside him on the top floor. The spirit asks directly whether that other player was Belzer. Evan confirms it, and explains that they once believed they had cleared the tower together, but the goddess did not accept that outcome. Because of that, the successor's power was split in two and the pair eventually divided into opposing camps. One side went to the human realm and the other to the demon realm, setting Evan and Belzer on separate paths. When the spirit questions his old promise to grant them the successor's power, Evan insists he was not lying. He explains that incomplete power cannot be properly passed on in the first place. More importantly, he says he has no desire to become this tower's successor anymore. His only real goal now is to kill Demon King Belzer. That confession leaves the spirit shaken. Evan laughs off the heavy revelation and tries to brush it aside as if it were nothing serious. He then turns back to the immediate problem and urges Mr. to help search for a route through the dungeon again. Mr. returns at once, proving Evan right that brute force alone only loops him back to the same place. Evan starts to explain they need to understand the maze first, but Mr. cuts him off and orders him to just follow. Mr. reveals that despite his attitude, he has already found a way out. Evan is caught off guard by that claim. Mr. leads him to a spiral chamber that seems to descend deeper into the dungeon. At the bottom, a refined elf swordsman appears waiting beneath a shaft of light. Seeing that the hero may have escaped the maze, the elf decides he must intervene personally. Meanwhile, Yuta and Kalina are also returned to the chamber with the dragon statue again. Yuta concludes that taking a wrong route in this dungeon resets them back to the beginning. He admits that ordinary methods like marking the walls are useless if everything resets. Kalina notices something odd instead and asks whether the dragon statue was always this small. She focuses on the statue itself as the one thing that may not be resetting normally. Yuta checks and agrees that the statue does seem smaller and rougher than before. That observation suddenly gives him an idea about how the dungeon works. He tells Kalina he thinks he has found the way out. He asks her to trust him and says they should go back the way they came. Kalina is baffled because retracing their steps sounds like the opposite of escaping. She questions what good it could possibly do. Yuta argues that wandering blindly is worse, and insists they need to test his theory. Kalina reluctantly agrees to follow his lead. Together they decide that in a dead end like this, trying something unconventional is their only option. They turn around and retrace their route through the maze. As expected, they are sent back again, but Yuta is no longer discouraged. Instead, he confirms that the result matches exactly what he predicted. He explains that although the chamber looks the same, they have actually advanced one stage forward. He points Kalina toward a new detail and asks her to look carefully. She realizes something important has changed. A torch that was dark before is now lit. Yuta concludes that their goal is to keep searching for these anomalies until every torch is lit. Kalina demands a clearer explanation of what he means by anomalies. She presses him to define the rule precisely. Yuta says an anomaly is simply anything that differs from the dungeon's normal state. He gives the example of a trap appearing where there was none before. He adds that strange structural changes in the dungeon count the same way. From that, he lays out the rule. If they find no anomaly, they move forward, but if they spot one, they immediately turn back. By repeating that process, they can keep progressing until all the torches are lit. Kalina is skeptical that such a game-like rule could really be the answer. Yuta reassures her that it will work and says escaping this kind of puzzle is exactly his specialty. He asks her once more to trust him and follow his instructions. Another torch flares to life as their method continues to work. At last, a sealed passage opens before them. Yuta announces that they have finally opened the path onward. Kalina is amazed that he solved the riddle so quickly, but he plays it off with easy confidence. He explains that he is the sort of person who has played every new game he could get his hands on. That experience let him recognize the dungeon's gimmick the moment he noticed the shrinking statue. Kalina, now impressed, thanks Yuta for getting them through alive. They hurry downward, hoping to reunite with the others. Instead of their companions, they arrive before a vast chamber sealed by imposing doors. They realize they have entered a new place entirely and wonder where they are now. Kalina worries that Mr. and Evan are nowhere in sight. Before they can search further, the elf swordsman suddenly appears behind Yuta and strikes. Kalina intercepts the attack just in time and throws herself into battle to protect him. Their weapons clash as she meets the assassin head-on. The elf praises them for making it this far, addressing them as companions of the hero. He admits that solving Bowser's personal maze proves they are more capable than expected. Yuta joins the fight, refusing to let the enemy act freely while he is still standing. The elf slips past his strike with overwhelming speed and effortless control. He coldly declares that they will never reach the Demon King. Yuta is shocked by how fast the elf moves. He realizes he cannot track the swordsman's motions at all. Kalina launches herself from above in a heavy downward blow to pin him down. The elf evades and counters so quickly that she is forced past him. He unleashes a storm of slashes, multiplying his pressure from every angle. Kalina endures the barrage and keeps her footing despite being driven back. She prepares another committed swing, refusing to yield. The elf slips around her attack and leaves her exposed again. He appears directly behind her before she can recover. Kalina is stunned that he repositioned without her even noticing. The elf raises his blade for a finishing strike. In the same instant, multiple copies or afterimages of him seem to surround Kalina with converging attacks. Kalina realizes he is overwhelming her with simultaneous pressure from all directions. She concludes that trying to catch him with her current weapon is impossible. The elf calmly judges her strength acceptable but dismisses her attacks as far too slow. He starts to say that with such a heavy weapon she can never defeat him. Before he can finish, something shatters at his face and interrupts his composure. Kalina seizes on his insult and repeats it back with rising anger. She opens her inventory and instantly swaps her axe for a massive firearm, challenging him to dodge this instead. Yuta is stunned that her weapon changed in the middle of battle. He immediately understands that she used her inventory window to switch equipment. Even so, he worries that a new weapon alone may still not be enough to beat this boss-level opponent. Kalina fires a devastating burst that floods the chamber with gunfire. The elf avoids the barrage with acrobatic precision, weaving through the impacts. While evading, he produces a small canister from his own inventory. Kalina notices the object too late as it leaves his hand. He sends the canister cutting through the air with his blade's momentum. It detonates on the floor and begins releasing smoke. Recognizing the device, the elf realizes it is a smoke grenade. He understands that from the beginning, Kalina's real plan was not to hit him directly but to blind him first. Kalina instantly draws her blade and takes the initiative. She opens with a sweeping sword strike that forces Graydon to give ground. Without hesitation, she pulls a new weapon from her inventory and switches to a battle staff mid-fight. Graydon barely manages to block the sudden change in attack pattern. The staff begins gathering a dangerous electrical charge. Kalina releases that stored power in a massive lightning blast that tears through the hall. Watching the exchange, Evan is stunned that she can cycle through so many weapons in one battle. He realizes her absurd weapon mastery makes her pitiful base stats almost irrelevant. The smoke clears as the force of her attack settles over the battlefield. Even Graydon, though hurt, laughs in admiration at finally seeing a player this unusual. He admits that changing weapons is one thing, but using completely different weapon types this freely is extraordinary. Still, he calmly prepares a countermeasure instead of panicking. Graydon dismisses Kalina's versatility as a trick and surrounds himself with demonic power. Evan suddenly realizes Graydon has not even begun using his true strength. Kalina understands the threat as Graydon reveals he has used less than a tenth of the ancient demon power sealed in his sword. He warns that if he unleashes the sword's real power, her tricks will mean nothing. Before he can finish, Yuta drops in from above to interrupt him. Yuta catches Graydon completely off guard and stomps him down from behind. The impact detonates through the floor and blasts Graydon into the ground. Yuta pauses, puzzled by how easily the attack landed. Graydon lies sprawled among the rubble while the others gather around the fallen boss. Even unconscious, Graydon leaves them wondering what kind of enemy he really was. Their attention shifts to the hole his body smashed through into the level below. Evan realizes Yuta literally broke through the floor to reach them and escape the dungeon. He awkwardly praises that reckless method as somehow fitting for Yuta. The armored hero laughs and confirms Yuta simply smashed through a wall and declared he had found the way. That story makes clear to Evan that Yuta is far more capable than brute strength alone suggested. Yuta cuts off the chatter and brings everyone back to the real problem. He asks what Graydon's connection is to the Demon King they are hunting. The hero explains that Graydon is Demon King Belzer's butler and the true second-in-command of the demon realm. He reveals Graydon repeatedly appeared as the boss of Belzer's custom dungeons whenever the heroes raided the demon realm. Those raids became especially brutal once Graydon entered his second phase, making normal strategies nearly useless. By sheer luck, Yuta knocked Graydon out before that transformation could happen this time. The hero praises Yuta and Kalina for surviving a fight that should have been much worse. Evan quickly downplays his own role and gives Kalina all the credit. With the boss down, he assumes the dungeon must be cleared and urges everyone to find the exit. He reasons that a cleared dungeon should have opened a way out nearby. Kalina stops him and points out that the exit may not be what he thinks it is. The sealed door from earlier has reopened, glowing with ominous energy. Evan brightens and immediately treats it as their way out. The group heads toward the door, and the hero eagerly talks about using this momentum to defeat the Demon King next. Yuta, however, is tired of this endless process and demands to know when they will finally reach Belzer himself. His impatience turns into open contempt for the Demon King's constant delays. The hero reassures him that they are close and only need to endure a little longer. He claims clearing the next stage should finally bring them to the real Demon King. Trying to rally the party, he urges everyone to push on just a bit more. Evan catches a contradiction and asks how the hero can know that if Graydon's stage was supposedly where he got stuck before. The hero brushes it off by saying it is simply how games work, with a main boss following a mid-boss after a short interval. He laughs off the suspicion and insists that, despite appearances, he is still a game expert. Then he proposes moving on while he checks for any remaining gimmicks. He tells the others to go ahead first and promises to follow after looking around. Evan reluctantly agrees, though his unease remains. The others start toward the next stage and tell him not to linger too long. Once they leave, the hero stays behind alone beside Graydon's unconscious body. His cheerful mask drops, revealing a far colder intent. He decides to finish the task he was really waiting to do. Using a strange purple sphere, he activates a hidden system-like power. That power engulfs Graydon and invokes the Otherworld's universal warehouse store. Graydon's body is dragged into the effect as if being processed like an item. The hero stands inside the purple light while the transfer completes. Smiling to himself, he notes that this makes Graydon the 70th person he has handled this way. He is transported into a vast storage space lined with preserved bodies, confirming a long-running scheme. There he taunts Belzer directly, as if this theft is part of a private contest between them. Meanwhile, the others pass through the door and arrive not at freedom, but inside the Demon King's castle itself. Evan and the little girl are stunned that they have reached Belzer's castle so quickly. The hero soon rejoins them and acts pleased that they arrived faster than expected. He confidently claims the Demon King will fall easily before Yuta's overwhelming strength. Yuta agrees in his own way, believing Belzer would be crushed by a single punch. The hero suddenly turns serious and warns Yuta not to lower his guard. He explains that this castle is not merely a residence but a giant dungeon personally designed by Belzer. Evan is thrown by the idea that the entire castle is one enormous dungeon. What troubles them more is that no monsters appear at all. Evan fears they may be trapped in another puzzle-like dungeon that hides its true path behind anomalies. His suspicion is answered when a blue humanoid figure materializes in front of them. He first mistakes it for a monster summoned by the Demon King. Then he realizes it resembles dummy data rather than a living creature. A voice from above congratulates the heroes for getting this far and mocks Graydon's failure to stop them. Belzer appears and boasts that this time will be different because he has already gathered all of their combat data. He presents the blue figure as something built from their strongest recorded abilities. Belzer proudly calls it his masterpiece, and Evan is horrified by what he is seeing. The construct finishes taking shape in the image of Yuta. Evan can barely process the absurdity of it. The false Yuta advances on the group with unsettling calm. Yuta demands to know what kind of thing dares stand before him. The duplicate answers with contempt, asking how someone so lowly dared imitate his form. Evan is thrown into confusion as it seems there are now two monster misters. He cannot believe raw copied data could produce something this complete. The real Yuta steps forward to test the imposter himself. He laughs at the idea of a puppet pretending to be him. Grabbing the copy, he challenges it to prove it can truly reproduce his fist. He dismisses the thing as a fake that only copied the shape of his punch. The duplicate answers by smashing him in the face with a counterblow. The force sends Yuta flying in tears through the hall. The copy remains composed, as if that exchange proved its point. Evan is shocked that the fake could actually overpower Yuta for a moment. Yuta rises and realizes the problem is not that the copy is too strong, but that it is using his fist incorrectly. He attacks again, demanding that the imitation copy him properly if it dares. This time their fists collide evenly in a direct contest of power. Yuta follows with a spinning kick to keep the pressure on. The duplicate immediately mirrors the same stance and prepares the same technique. It counters by launching upward with a crushing strike that knocks Yuta back down. Yuta lands hard but recovers at once, refusing to be overwhelmed. The copy presses forward with relentless speed. A barrage of mirrored blows rains down as the two trade the same martial movements. Watching from the side, Evan is horrified that the fake is fighting Yuta on equal footing. Yuta senses something even stranger in the exchange. To him, it feels as though the real one being pushed back might actually be himself. The duplicate abruptly changes tactics and summons a modern firearm from the warehouse system. Kalina instantly reacts and fires a precise shot to intercept it. The copy calmly raises the gun and takes aim anyway. A warehouse shield manifests and blocks Kalina's bullet before it can land. The projectile is stopped cleanly by the summoned barrier. Kalina is stunned that the enemy can use the same inventory tricks she relies on. Even while trading blows with Yuta, the copy keeps the warehouse shield active to neutralize her support fire. That realization leaves Kalina momentarily speechless. Yuta orders the imitation to focus on him alone instead of hiding behind cheap interference. He unleashes a furious close-range combination to overwhelm it with pure martial skill. The copy responds by summoning another item from the inventory, this time a warhammer. It equips the weapon and shifts into a hammer-based combat style. With a devastating six-path smash, it blasts Yuta away in a violent explosion. Evan cries out as Yuta is sent crashing back. Dronzer laughs in delight, thrilled that his creation is performing exactly as intended. He reminds them that the construct was built from the strongest data they provided him. The copy now stands armed with a massive hammer, and Dronzer warns that even all four of them together are not guaranteed victory. The hero curses Dronzer's arrogance, but he cannot deny the danger of the situation. He admits he never expected Dronzer to duplicate Yuta's abilities this completely. Evan finally understands that Dronzer had been preparing for them all along rather than merely waiting at the end. The hero rushes to check whether Yuta is still alive after the blast. He grimly repeats Dronzer's warning that defeating this thing may require all of them working together. Yuta answers with a laugh, taking the challenge as an insult rather than a setback. He refuses to accept that some lowly imitation could truly mimic his martial arts. Though he admits the trick is impressive, he treats it as nothing more than an interesting counterfeit. He plants his foot and prepares to show the difference between imitation and mastery. Calling on the first King Asura style, he dares the copy to reproduce a real martial art. He follows with Destruction Extreme Annihilation Strike, pouring overwhelming force into a finishing blow. The attack detonates across the hall in a massive fiery blast. Yet from within the explosion, the copy emerges still standing. It calmly reaches into the warehouse again and summons a sword. To everyone's disbelief, it calls forth the Holy Sword of Asterion and begins invoking celestial judgment. Evan is stunned because that is not Yuta's power at all. He realizes in horror that the copy is now using his own skill as well. The false Yuta unleashes the Holy Sword of Asterion with celestial judgment, combining Evan's ability with Yuta's body. Yuta is forced into the air as the attack bears down on him. He answers with another ultimate martial strike, meeting the holy attack head-on. Their clash erupts into a catastrophic explosion that engulfs the chamber. When the smoke begins to clear, the battlefield falls eerily quiet. Yuta emerges unimpressed and judges the imitation to be far weaker than it pretends. He explains that the copy lacks the internal energy in its dantian needed to use blast at full power. Against a puppet missing that core foundation, he decides this level of strength is more than enough. The damaged construct staggers as the system reports critical damage, confirming Yuta has found the flaw that can break Dronzer's masterpiece. As the enemy fortress pushes its last defensive system to maximum output, the battle suddenly escalates. The party realizes a final defense has been triggered and braces for something worse. Their fear proves right when the summoned boss enters a second phase far earlier than expected. The transformed guardian confronts Evan, and the demon king mocks it as a stubborn puppet. He taunts Evan as if this desperate resistance is the creature's final struggle before death. Instead of wavering, the boss charges straight at him. Mid-attack, it pulls a battle axe from inventory and arms itself for a finishing blow. It launches Evan's Earth Splitter technique from above, aiming to crush him outright. Evan answers with a single explosive counter-strike. His blow overwhelms the attack and smashes into the Guardian with devastating force. The system immediately reports that more than half of the defense data has been destroyed. Recovery fails, and Evan seizes the Guardian by the face before it can stabilize. He drives it into the ground hard enough to make the system spiral into repeated errors. The final defense shuts down completely, and the link system is declared beyond repair. Evan dismisses the imitation as worthless trash and finishes it without hesitation. Outside, the castle looms under the moon as the ruined defense collapses. The defeated boss begins to break apart and vanish. Far above, the Demon King's control interface flashes a fatal error. He learns that the dungeon boss summoned by player Nim is dissipating and is stunned by the absurd skill that caused it. What unsettles him even more is that Evan did not just wreck the dungeon but forced the defense system itself to shut down. Even so, he laughs it off and admits this attempt was never going to be easy either. He reveals that he has prepared a special measure specifically to stop Evan. This time, he vows to personally crush Evan's plans with his own hands. Meanwhile, the heroes finally reach the cathedral-like heart of the castle. Stepping inside, they realize they have arrived at the last threshold. The massive doors before them are identified as the entrance to the final stage where the Demon King waits. The knight proudly celebrates that his gamble paid off and they reach the end quickly. He openly credits Evan for clearing the remaining monsters in a single blow and carrying them this far. The others silently recognize that without Evan, reaching this point would have been far harder. The final doors open, inviting them into the last chamber. The knight rallies everyone to work together and bring down the Demon King. But once inside, he notices something is wrong. The supposed final enemy is nowhere to be seen, and the knight cannot understand where he went. He wonders if the Demon King actually abandoned his own castle and fled. Instead, the castle detects intruders and automatically activates an annihilation protocol. The system releases toxic gas throughout the entire area, turning the chamber into a death trap. The brown-haired young man and Kalina immediately realize the gas is poison. As the fumes spread, they are horrified that the Demon King would resort to poison gas at all. The Demon King appears wearing a gas mask and smugly introduces the poison as his newly prepared Venomex. He declares that from the moment they inhaled it, their deaths were guaranteed. The castle keeps pumping more poison into the room as the protocol continues. The party is shaken by the realization that the Demon King has weaponized the entire castle against them. Even the knight and Kalina begin struggling as the gas takes hold. Watching their distress, the Demon King confirms that the poison is working exactly as intended. He keeps savoring their panic and boasting about the strength of Venomex. At the same time, he manipulates the system while continuing his threat. He spreads his arms and declares that they were dead the moment the trap began. The system warns that the toxic concentration is still rising toward lethal levels. The knight orders everyone to hold their breath, knowing that inhaling more means certain death. Evan calmly produces antidote potions and starts distributing them to the others. Before the Demon King can enjoy the result, the long-haired warrior lunges at him. His kick lands cleanly and interrupts the Demon King's smug control of the battlefield. The Demon King is forced to admit that Evan can still move normally even after breathing the poison. He tries to convince himself Evan is only pretending to be unaffected. To test that, he draws a stronger poison injector. He dives in and stabs Evan directly, expecting the new toxin to finish what the gas could not. Evan barely reacts, studying the injector with mild curiosity instead of pain. The Demon King warns that this poison is even stronger than the last, and should be impossible to endure. He explains that a single hit should rot Evan's arm and collapse his organs. Evan answers by blasting him away before the poison can matter. He dismisses the attack as meaningless. Then he reveals the reason. His body has already reached absolute poison immunity. With the Demon King's control disrupted, the annihilation protocol crashes and the toxic gas begins to dissipate. Freed from immediate death, the brown-haired young man drinks the antidote Evan provided. He gratefully realizes Evan saved his life. As the chamber clears, the knight calls the Demon King a lunatic for trying to kill everyone the moment they entered. The young man admits that without Evan's help, he and Kalina would already be dead. Evan downplays it, saying he merely handed out antidotes. The knight cheerfully explains that he brought plenty of emergency supplies just in case. Kalina quietly blames herself for lowering her guard and not preparing as carefully as Evan did. She formally thanks the knight for saving her with the antidote. He redirects that gratitude toward the man who truly carried them here. The long-haired warrior states plainly that they only reached this point because of Evan. The knight agrees and marvels at how quickly Evan finished the stage. To him, Evan's pace is practically a speedrun. The long-haired warrior then reminds the knight of the promise he made. Having defeated the Demon King as requested, he demands the promised power immediately. The knight's answer begins with an unsettling smile. He claims he has not forgotten the deal at all, but while facing the quest interface, he reveals that all he has to do now is press the completion button. He assures the warrior that doing so would let him fully obtain the successor's power. The system confirms the Demon King has been defeated and asks whether the quest should be completed as is. Instead of finishing it, the knight reflects on how hard he worked to clear this quest. He recalls the endless replacements, shifting dungeon gimmicks, and constant frustration. Even the butler-like boss still haunts him as one of the worst parts of the ordeal. The young man notices Evan's silence and growing unease. Trying to be considerate, he urges Evan to hurry and complete the quest. The knight hesitates and admits the journey was not entirely miserable. He remembers how the world treated him like a hero and let him enjoy privileges and wealth. He even fondly recalls using divine authority to indulge himself with admiration and romance. That thought makes him realize that completing the quest would end the life he has grown attached to. A dangerous idea takes hold, and he begins wondering whether ending everything now would be a waste. The young man senses the shift and demands to know what he is thinking. The knight finally says it outright. Rather than finish, he wants to start over from the beginning. The system accepts his refusal and sends the quest into a hidden third route. It announces that all tower data except the successors will be reset, and a countdown begins. The young man is stunned and asks what the knight thinks he is doing. He cannot understand why anyone would throw away everything after coming this far. The knight answers that he likes his life in the tower too much to let it end here. He confesses that what he truly wants is to enjoy this world forever. He explains that if he ever failed to clear the quest before the time limit, the Demon King would simply win, so he needed another method. That method was to exploit a bug that let him repeatedly reset the tower instead of truly finishing it. He coldly warns the young man that his data will soon be erased along with the reset. The long-haired warrior realizes the knight used all of them as tools to trigger another reset and thanks him with bitter disgust. The knight only laughs harder, already imagining doing it all again after the world rewinds. Before he can finish gloating, a massive cube-like artifact drops into the chamber. It crashes down beside him and shatters his composure. The Demon King reappears and reminds Evan that he never intended to let the reset happen. The system announces that the quest has been modified and that resetting the tower is no longer possible. The Demon King reveals that the bug Evan relied on has been completely patched by his own hand. Evan is forced to confront the impossible claim that the Demon King personally rewrote the system. He rejects it at first, insisting that even the Demon King should not be capable of that. In response, the Demon King tears into the demon realm itself, showing he can directly tamper with the tower's underlying structure. A system barrier instantly traps Evan in place. System overdrive activates, and movement restriction locks Evan down for 10 full minutes. The Demon King tells him that all those repeated resets gave him exactly what he needed most: time. By watching Evan abuse the reset loop, he learned the tower's systems and structure in detail. He concludes that the tower was riddled with flaws, contradictory logic, and exploitable code. That is why Evan had been able to exploit the reset bug for so long. And that is also why the Demon King could identify and eliminate the very bug that let Evan restart without completing the quest. Now he declares that every bug in the tower has been dealt with, leaving Evan no escape. With that advantage secured, he moves to end their struggle for good. He announces that their true final game begins here and now. The system creates a sealed one-on-one combat space and forbids any outside interference. Beyond the chamber, the tower itself stands unchanged, as if waiting for the next stage. Inside the dungeon, monsters still surge through the remaining floors. The Demon King unleashes overwhelming power as the battle space destabilizes. A violent blast tears through the arena. At that critical moment, the young man shouts for Evan to act. The knight dives for the core artifact, realizing that destroying it will erase the monsters. He succeeds, and the system confirms the colony core has been destroyed, causing all dungeon monsters to be sequentially eliminated. With the stage suddenly cleared, the knight laughs at how easy it became once the core was gone. He even boasts that together he and Evan can clear any stage. To him, the world feels like the perfect realization of the virtual reality game they always wanted. He starts imagining it as a utopia built just for the two of them. Evan refuses to relax and warns that they still know nothing about the next stage. The knight agrees in words, but his confidence remains absolute. He says that as long as he has the game developer beside him, nothing ahead can threaten them. Evan quietly agrees, but his tone carries a different meaning. He reflects that they climbed the tower so easily because this world truly functioned like a game with strategies for everything. As its developer, he already understood most of its rules, systems, items, and monsters, which made conquering it far easier for him. At last they reached the top and met the being who created this world. Faced with that creator, the knight asks if the rumor is true. He wants confirmation that clearing the special quest can create an entirely new world inside the tower. The creator confirms that it is possible. The knight is thrilled and immediately addresses Evan by his true name, Dronzer, as if the answer settles everything. He calls it a golden opportunity to build the world they always dreamed of. But Evan rejects the fantasy at once and refuses the role the knight imagines for him. He reveals his true desire is not to rule a new world in the tower, but to return to his original world. The knight is left stunned, unable to believe Evan is serious about leaving it all behind. A knight tries to tempt the Demon King by insisting this fabricated world is better than the miserable reality outside. Dronzer rejects that argument and insists that no matter how ugly it is, reality cannot be replaced by a false world. He makes clear that any paradise built here is still only an imitation, never the real thing. The knight is shaken to hear Dronzer hold firm to that conviction. A silver-haired woman steps in, noting that the two men want opposite outcomes and deciding to settle it by force. She declares that the tower's reward, including succession and the chance to return to the original world, can belong to only one victor. So she orders them to prove whose desire deserves fulfillment through their own strength. The reward will go only to whoever clears the quest. The system seals the battlefield off completely, blocking all outside access and interference. Outside the sealed zone, Nim is left confused by the sudden lockdown. He cannot understand why the Demon King has somehow reappeared. Dronzer's ally can only stare at the barrier, unable to tell what is unfolding inside. Refusing to stay helpless, he gathers power in his hand. He strikes the sealed space anyway, forcing an abnormal interference that throws the system into error. Nim and his blonde companion are stunned as the impossible breach begins. Dronzer's ally keeps pressing in despite the rules, determined to break through. The system reports that an outside intervention has exceeded every allowed limit. Inside the quest space, the battlefield is rewritten into a digital arena where the knight and Dronzer face each other again. The intruder pushes the system into overdrive with raw force. He unleashes a torrential attack from the system itself, turning its power into a direct assault. The knight answers by raising magical defenses on both arms. He counters with a skill called Mirror Gate, drawing on the tower's storehouse of power. Dronzer is suddenly surrounded by a rain of attacks from every direction. The system escalates again and forms an absolute barrier around the assault. Instead of panicking, Dronzer laughs in admiration at how far the system has been bent. He marvels that someone can manually rewrite the system's rules and even create a space like this. The knight takes that as proof that Dronzer was always meant to inherit the tower's power. Dronzer immediately rejects it and tells him to take the power himself if he loves this world so much. He states flatly that no matter how many times the tower resets, he will never become its successor. The knight laughs and admits he never wanted that burden anyway. What he truly wants is to remain in the tower forever as a player, endlessly enjoying it. His attack cracks the arena itself under the force of the clash. Then Dronzer's ally smashes through the broken space and enters the sealed battle. He tears down the barrier with brute force and charges straight in. Dronzer is caught off guard by the sudden arrival. The knight realizes too late that the outside interference has become something far worse than a system error. Dronzer's ally calmly decides that since the knight tried to deceive him, killing him now would be justified. The knight hurriedly tries to stop him, sensing that he has lost control of the situation. He warns that killing him recklessly will prevent anyone from obtaining the successor's power. He explains that if the quest ends with the Demon King's victory, the reward structure changes completely. In that outcome, Belzer would simply return to his original world and no successor would ever emerge. That would not only erase the successor's power but doom everyone in the tower along with it. Desperate, he urges Belzer's ally to kill the Demon King immediately so the successor's power can still be claimed. Instead of listening, the intruder blasts him away with contemptuous ease. The knight coughs blood, realizing his bargaining no longer works. Belzer's ally dismisses the entire quest and its reward as meaningless. What he wants is not the title but the power hidden inside the knight's body, and he decides to rip it out by force. The knight panics and insists that extracting an incomplete successor's power should be impossible. Belzer's ally ignores the warning and drives his fist in. With a devastating martial technique, he shatters the knight's core at the source. The knight's body convulses as the blow destroys him from within. The system confirms the impossible has happened and that the successor's power is being forcibly extracted from the player's body. Belzer can only stare in disbelief at the monstrous strength of the man who just overpowered the system itself. He realizes this intruder is not merely breaking the tower's rules but tearing the successor's power free without any restraint at all. To such a man, the tower's system is no more than a child's toy. The system suffers a fatal collapse and forcibly terminates the quest. The arena fills with smoke as the artificial space begins to fail. The knight lies broken and coughing, barely alive. Even in that state, he laughs and admits he knew from the start that this man was absurdly strong. Belzer's ally looks at the extracted power in his hand and cannot believe such a ridiculous feat was possible. The dying knight understands that this is truly the end for him. With the successor's ritual failed and no one inheriting the tower, he bitterly concludes that everything was pointless. He regrets ever forcing the issue and admits he should have simply let Belzer take the reward. He realizes that if he had done that, they would never have been dragged into this lethal ritual at all. He condemns the entire quest as a disgusting game that only ends when one of them dies. Outside, the tower stands ominously as the consequences of the collapse spread. Yet the knight still declares that this round ends in his own victory over Belzer. He insists that he will now inherit the tower's power and realize the world he dreamed of inside it. Belzer, wounded and kneeling, is left speechless by that delusion. The knight grins as if he still believes he can seize everything. Belzer demands to know why he did not take the tower's power earlier if that was truly his goal. He points out that if the knight had accepted the quest from the beginning, either of them needed to die. Then Belzer reminds him that this world is only an illusion created by Ashura. Because of that, he says, building another illusion inside her illusion is empty and worthless. He tells the knight to stop hesitating and kill him if he truly believes in this false paradise, though he admits he would likely make the same choice again. Belzer names Evan, not himself, as the true winner of this quest. The knight rejects that idea outright. He refuses to let the quest end this way and reaches for the system again. But Belzer suddenly understands that the quest world resembles the kind of game Evan always dreamed of. He realizes Evan genuinely loved conquering the dungeons and gimmicks Belzer designed. So Evan intended to remain here forever with Belzer, never clearing the quest at all. He wanted to stay inside this perfect game indefinitely rather than leave it behind. The system announces that the successor's ritual is terminated, no successor has appeared, and all tower data will be deleted. As his body begins to break apart, Evan is hit by a wave of regret. He confesses that what he really wanted was simply to keep enjoying more of the games Belzer created. Even knowing it was an illusion, he still loved this world, but Belzer cuts through that attachment as childish delusion. Belzer asks what value there is in clinging so desperately to a world built by someone else. Evan falters, wounded both physically and emotionally. Belzer condemns a life spent repeating a finished game on a stage and under rules made by others. A real man, he says, must stand in the real world on his own feet. A comfortable illusion can never become real life. Those words shake Evan, who has never truly faced what the real world means for him. He can only laugh weakly at the cruelty of hearing that truth now. Since he is already dying, he wonders whether any of it matters anymore. Still, he tries to comfort himself by recalling that he lived a lively life full of adventure and pleasure. Measured that way, he decides his life was not entirely bad. As he continues to dissolve, he says that if there is another chance, he may try living in the real world instead. The system confirms that the player's data has been completely deleted and the battle zone can no longer be maintained. Belzer's ally stands with the extracted power while Nim watches from a distance as the arena shuts down. Nim and his companion are stunned to see Belzer alive and safe. They immediately demand to know what happened inside and what became of Evan and the Demon King. Belzer's ally answers that Evan lost the successor's power and vanished from this world forever. He adds that they will never see Evan here again. Nim struggles to grasp that Evan has truly disappeared. Belzer's ally explains that the man who intervened stripped Evan of his power, causing the quest to end in Belzer's victory. He says he will soon return to his original world, and when he does, the tower will lose the system and all remaining data will be erased. Though he does not know exactly who they are or why they sought the successor's power, he has reached one firm conclusion. Their true target was always Ashura, the goddess who built the system over this world. The silver-haired woman finally confirms it and offers to reveal Ashura's location. Nim is shocked that she knows what they were really after. He asks how she could possibly know they were searching for Ashura. Belzer's ally answers that the intruder's overwhelming power made the truth obvious. For a moment, the scene blanks as the revelation settles in. He concludes that the intruder possessed the power to destroy the world Ashura made. Belzer admits he wanted the same thing, because Ashura imprisoned both him and Evan in this false world and created the entire system around them. But he lacked the strength to destroy it himself, and could only tamper with the system she built. Through years of probing the tower's secrets, he uncovered one crucial truth. This world was not created from nothing by Asura. It existed long before her. Nim is stunned to learn that Asura did not truly create the world at all. Dronzer explains that she merely overlaid the framework called the system onto a world that already existed. To keep that system stable, she confined them within the massive structure known as the tower. Instead of ruling the whole world directly, she divided it into smaller worlds called towers and managed them separately. Nim finally begins to understand the scale of what they are dealing with. He realizes there is a far wider world beyond the towers Asura created. That confirms Dronzer's suspicion that Asura intended to dominate this world through the system from the very beginning. Based on his long research, Dronzer believes Asura is at the center of this world, overseeing all the towers she established. At the heart of the first tower lies the source of every system, the Administrator's Tower. Nim and his companion repeat the name in shock. Dronzer says that although he is about to return to his original world, they must reach the Administrator's Tower and find Asura. He asks them to avenge Evan in his place. Dronzer's ally accepts immediately, saying he intended to do that regardless. Nim adds that the true cause of all this suffering is the woman who summoned them into this world. The blonde woman agrees that Asura is the root of the tragedy. Dronzer's ally vows to storm Asura's tower and destroy both her and this cursed world. With his business finished, he turns toward the portal the system generates for his departure. Nim desperately calls out and begs him to take them along. Dronzer quietly agrees. As the tower around them collapses, he decides that with Nim, reaching the truth may actually be possible. The system completes the return ritual and erases all tower data except for the returner himself. Even at the final prompt, Dronzer mocks the system for asking whether he truly wishes to return only after everything is over. He chooses return without hesitation, saying there is no reason left for him to remain here. The system praises player Nim and begins transferring his data back to his original world. As he fades, Dronzer bitterly reflects that he is really leaving just like this. What he truly wanted was to go back to their original world together with Evan. He mourns that if they had all made the same choice and never been summoned here, none of them would have had to fight like this. In his last thoughts, he remembers the carefree days when he and Evan simply played games together. He clings to the memory of their ordinary joy before everything became a trap. Outside, the tower violently disintegrates as the system collapses for good. Nim watches the destruction and realizes that this tower too is being erased. He concludes that without a successor, the tower can no longer sustain its power and naturally ceases to exist. As they plan their next move, Yuda asks where the Administrator's Tower the Demon King mentioned can be found. He learns only that it lies at the world's center, a place no one can actually identify. Kalina decides their first priority is to understand this world's geography before chasing the tower. Since they have already gained the successor's power, she proposes exploring beyond the tower for a while. At the same time, their master draws on that power and begins testing what it can do for him. The surge hits Yuda, and he immediately realizes the same strange phenomenon has begun again. Just like before, alien memories start pouring into his mind against his will. Those memories carry him to a cosmic scene centered on a dark, radiant core atop a ruined pillar. A woman stands before that power and confronts it directly. She reaches out and makes contact with the force instead of recoiling from it. In response, countless information windows and records erupt around her as if the power is being analyzed or accessed. The flood of unreadable data suggests she is interfacing with some vast system of knowledge. A faint smile reveals that she understands what she is seeing. She moves through the sea of information with the confidence of someone in control of it. Back in the present, the master confirms that this new power is gradually weakening the seal placed on him by a woman he hates. Even so, he judges the amount he has recovered far too small to restore his dantian. Yuda is stunned that even this much power still counts as nowhere near enough. The master explains that before confronting the woman in the tower, he must break the seal completely. Otherwise he will be trapped by her tricks again and have his dantian sealed once more. Because gathering that power tower by tower would take too long if they stay together, he changes the plan. From now on, each of them will be responsible for claiming the successor's power from a separate tower. Yuda is horrified by the idea of being sent after a tower on his own. He protests that without their master, he has no idea how he is supposed to obtain the power at all. He weakly suggests Kalina might manage it, then admits he himself has no ability to clear a tower. The master answers with contempt and knocks him down for already giving up on becoming stronger. He bluntly states that all of them are still too weak to destroy a tower and lack even the basic stamina and conditioning required. Then he offers a brutal solution, promising that his special training will completely remake them. With absolute confidence, he vows to forge them into people stronger than anyone else. The promise quickly gives way to the harsh reality of what his training means. Yuda is thrown straight into combat drills and forced to attack with everything he has. The master instantly overwhelms him and sends him crashing through the air. Yuda slams into the ground, battered before he can even mount a proper offense. The hit leaves him coughing blood and barely conscious. He begs for mercy, but the master shows no sympathy. Yuda complains that every spar leaves him feeling as if his whole body is about to break. He sees no point in training that ends in a second before he can even swing his sword properly. The master calls him a fool for learning nothing from repeated beatings. He tells Yuda that the point of sparring is not sword form for its own sake. What matters is discovering how to stop his fist and finding any possible way to win, then refining those methods relentlessly. Without that desperate resolve, Yuda will keep being blown away by the same punch forever. Yuda finally grasps the lesson and wonders if he must enter every match ready to die. He concludes that he must use any means necessary and fight with the intent to cut his opponent down. The master approves that shift in mindset at once. Encouraged, Yuda asks him not to take back those words later. He commits himself to fighting dirty if that is what it takes to survive and win. Reviewing their past sparring, he realizes the master had always waited for him to attack first. He understands that those earlier matches were lenient in their own way, because the master was holding back for his sake. The real pattern becomes clear to him. Every time he prepared to swing, the master's fist arrived first. So Yuda devises a trick instead of charging honestly. He feints an attack to bait out the punch and create an opening. When the master reacts, Yuda believes he has finally created his chance. He is wrong, and the master still lands the blow before Yuda can capitalize. Nova cries out in alarm as Yuda is struck again. The master dismisses the ploy as clumsy, though he admits it was not entirely bad. He tells Yuda to make the deception more convincing next time. That night, after the punishment ends, the group regathers around a campfire. Kalina tends Yuda's wounds and is relieved that he was not seriously injured. She reassures him that the damage is manageable and expects him back in training the next day. Her calm confidence makes the ordeal sound routine rather than cruel. Yuda laughs in exhausted relief, even while knowing tomorrow will be another nightmare. Trying to lighten the mood, he marvels that Kalina seems capable of everything from swordsmanship to firearms to healing. That admiration turns into self-pity as he wishes he had even one thing he was naturally good at. He asks what he must do to become like her or their master and find a strength of his own. He knows he needs enough real power to destroy a tower himself instead of leaning on Ashua's manufactured stats. Kalina answers by revealing that she once started out just as helpless, unable even to handle a single long sword. She says her lack of talent extended to every weapon, and that failure got her denied recognition as a warrior and exiled from her village. Yuda is shocked to hear that someone like her was once cast out as worthless. She explains that the world she came from valued only inborn talent. Because of that belief, people were forced into narrow paths from childhood. Each person chose the weapon supposedly best suited to them before adulthood and trained only with that one. Her current style of freely using many weapons would have been unthinkable in that world. Even after being expelled, however, she refused to give up. Determined to be acknowledged no matter what, she trained with every weapon she could find until she earned recognition at last. That effort made her famous as the weapon master, someone who could wield anything. Yuda is deeply impressed that she achieved all of that through sheer persistence rather than talent. Kalina tells him not to despair just because he feels lost now. She assures him that any path pursued without giving up will eventually leave a mark. Her point is simple: effort accumulates, even when progress is invisible at first. The next day, the master's special training resumes without mercy. Yuda is forced into repeated one-on-one sparring sessions, sometimes 3 times a day and sometimes 5. He gets knocked unconscious in every match, yet he can feel himself changing little by little. Eventually he learns to parry some of the master's attacks and even control the holy sword's magic without relying on stats. After more time passes, that slow progress begins to show in battle. Yuda can now stand his ground and meet the master's pressure instead of being instantly erased. The master acknowledges the improvement, but immediately demands more. He warns that such shallow attacks still cannot draw even a drop of his blood. Yuda accepts that he can now block some punches, but knows defense alone is not enough. His real problem is that he still has no way to actually hurt his opponent. Since ordinary swordplay will never bridge that gap, he turns to a technique he has barely used before. He gathers all the holy sword's magic into a single point for one decisive strike. That concentrated attack erupts as the holy sword of Asteria. The blow detonates into a holy pull flash powerful enough to tear up the ground. The master endures the blast and remains standing. Instead of anger, he finds the result amusing. Then he reveals that Yuda has finally managed to make him bleed. He praises the strike as truly excellent, and says it is now strong enough to shatter the towers created by the woman he despises. With that, he declares Yuda's training complete. On the 3rd day of training, Kalina begins her own attempt to break past her limits. She practices alone with relentless focus, driving her blade through the air again and again. Her concentration sharpens as she searches for the same breakthrough Yuda found. She channels power into a branch, and uses it to smash through falling logs. The hardened branch survives impacts that should have destroyed it. Even so, Kalina judges the result insufficient. To reach the master's level, she knows she must go beyond her current ceiling. The master admits her swordsmanship is already respectable. But he also says that cutting down a few trees with one swing still falls short of true mastery. He sets a harsher standard, telling her that a real expert should be able to shatter a massive boulder with nothing more than a wooden branch. To prove the point, he demonstrates the feat himself. With a single branch, he blasts apart a huge rock as if it were brittle clay. He tells her that if she were truly expert, even a simple stick would be enough to destroy something that large. Kalina asks to spar with him the way Yuda did, hoping battle will force her growth. She believes she needs an opponent far stronger than herself to break through. The master rejects that idea and says sparring with him is not what she needs right now. Unlike Yuda, he tells her to stop relying on weapons and techniques and instead train her own inherent strength. Her task is to break a boulder with a branch, just as he did, before he will even consider sparring. Until she can do that, he refuses her request. By the 4th day, Kalina is still locked in that impossible training. She keeps striking the boulder with all her power, but the branch only splinters. Every attempt ends with the wood breaking apart, while the stone remains untouched. The repeated failures leave her frustrated and no closer to the answer. She vents her anger at the absurdity of the task. Yuda and Nova watch from a distance and note how completely she has thrown herself into training. Yuda admires her dedication but worries she may collapse if she keeps pushing without rest. He thinks even special training should allow some breaks. Nova points out a crucial difference between Kalina and the others: she still retains her stat system. Because that system remains active, no matter how hard she trains, her growth may still be capped by fixed values. Yuda realizes the system may actually be suppressing Kalina instead of helping her. He wonders whether breaking her status window, as happened to him, would free her from that limit. Nova says it should be possible in principle, the same way his own status window was broken. But she immediately warns that doing it recklessly could kill Kalina. The status window is directly tied to a player's life force, so if it disappears, that life force should drop to 0. Yuda is horrified by the implication that breaking Kalina's window could cost her life. He objects that if that were true, he and the others should have died when their own windows shattered. He points out that they should have vanished on the spot just like Lee Chanwoo. Nova admits she does not fully understand that contradiction either. Still, she insists that destroying Kalina's status window is not the answer to surpassing her limits. She believes their master already knows this and is deliberately steering Kalina elsewhere. Whatever breakthrough Kalina needs, it is something she must discover on her own. By the 5th day, Kalina is still hammering away at the same impossible lesson. She pours more power into the branch and slams it into the boulder again. The strike carves a glowing line across the rock but still fails to break it. The branch shatters instead, leaving only broken pieces at her feet. Exasperated, she wonders how anyone could possibly break a boulder with a branch at all. She has swung it thousands of times and still cannot even leave a proper scratch. That frustration makes her reconsider what kind of strength the master actually used. A new thought stops her cold as she questions whether it was really just raw power. She begins to suspect the boulder was not shattered by physical force alone. If it had been, the branch should have snapped under the same impact. Instead, the branch had seemed to turn into steel, neither breaking nor bending. Kalina concludes that the master must have used his own specialized energy to harden the branch itself, and that hidden principle may be the key she has been missing. From the start, Kalina realizes her training was never just about becoming stronger. To break the giant boulder, she understands she must also harden the branch she uses as a weapon. She puts that insight into practice and makes the branch strike with the toughness of steel. As the forest settles, her master approaches to judge the result. He stops before her, recognizing that her breakthrough has finally come. He declares that she has reached enlightenment at last. In his eyes, her skill has risen to the level of a true expert. Satisfied, he asks what she wants to do next if that is truly her wish. Kalina answers that there is no need for a final spar, because she already has her answer. Instead of accepting his test, she calmly takes up her weapon. She launches straight at him to prove her growth through action. Her master meets the charge in midair, and their weapons clash at high speed. Even after the exchange, he notices her branch has become strong enough to damage his own. The force of her attack tears through the space behind him, showing how far she has advanced. Kalina concludes that a sparring match is no longer necessary. She declares that she has already surpassed her former limits and unveils a new Kalina-style technique, Vajra weaponization. As she demonstrates the power she can now gather, the scene shifts to a discussion of the successor's power. Nova explains that in this region there are only 2 towers where that power can be sensed. One of those towers lies nearby. The other is farther away, making the closer target the obvious choice. Yuda thinks through the clue and confirms that only those 2 towers fit the description. He turns to the Demon King and asks what they should do next. Yuda starts to suggest splitting up with Kalina now that she is strong enough. The Demon King cuts him off and orders Yuda to come with him instead. He bluntly says he needs Yuda's help to destroy the tower. Yuda is stunned by the sudden request and cannot imagine how he could assist someone so much stronger. The Demon King explains that Kalina no longer needs Yuda, because she can destroy a tower by herself now. Kalina adds that Yuda has grown stronger too, but warns that if he does not accompany the Demon King, he will likely die. The Demon King frames the journey as Yuda's final training and orders him to learn at his side. Pressed like that, Yuda can only laugh awkwardly and accept. He still checks whether Kalina is truly fine with being left behind. Kalina agrees without complaint. She even welcomes it as a better chance to test the results of her training. She tells Yuda not to worry about her and to support the Demon King well. With fierce confidence, she vows to crush whatever successor waits in the tower. Yuda finally gives in and accepts the plan. The group decides to part ways, promising to reunite here after they safely obtain the successor's power. As Kalina heads toward her tower, Yuda calls after her to make sure she comes back alive. She advances alone with her sword drawn, ready to face whatever waits. Her focus sharpens as she prepares for the confrontation ahead. Remembering her progress, the Demon King reflects that she achieved enlightenment and mastered energy circulation on her own. Kalina pauses at the unfamiliar term, realizing there was a deeper principle behind her breakthrough. The Demon King explains that energy circulation is the art of drawing internal energy from the dantian through the meridians and controlling it freely. He tells her that her desire to strengthen her weapon naturally made that internal energy flow into it. Kalina finally understands what happened. He adds that she already contains more than enough internal energy in her body and dantian. If she learns to control it as freely as he does, she can reach the first-rate realm. That is why he urges her to keep devoting herself to training. Kalina takes that lesson to heart, deciding she must grow strong enough to defeat the woman who created the towers and return home, just as strong as him. She swears to defeat the successor by her own power, and reach the first-rate realm he described. At that moment, the system confirms Yuda as a player and transfers him to tower number 296. The world shifts, and the journey into the new tower begins. Outside the tower, Yuda immediately discovers that hunger and taste are real here when he bites into a fruit. He enjoys it and marvels that it tastes like honey. Cheerfully, he offers some to the Demon King as they walk. The Demon King refuses, saying he does not bother with unnecessary meals. Yuda is left deflated by the cold response. Still, he reflects that the world outside the tower seems almost untouched by the system. Unlike the virtual tower worlds, this place lets them fully feel hunger and fatigue. The Demon King agrees that the difference is real. That leads Yuda to wonder where the original inhabitants of this world went if it once truly existed. Nova doubts Ashwa simply slaughtered everyone, even if she is cruel. She instead suggests that Ashwa may have turned those people into players too. The idea shocks Yuda, but it matches the unease he has been feeling. Nova reasons that Ashwa may be using players as fuel to maintain the countless towers. Yuda remembers hearing something similar from Ashwa before. He recalls the chilling claim that all players are merely components used to build this world. That memory confirms the cruelty behind the system. Nova adds another revelation. Fragments of Ashwa's memories are stored inside her. She cannot explain why, but she is certain Nova herself is also part of the system Ashwa created. Yuda wonders if Nova's presence is the reason he survived despite his broken status window. Their thoughts are cut short when the Demon King stops and asks if they have reached the place. He stares up at the tower and asks whether the successor's power is inside. Nova confirms that this is the right tower and that the successor's power is definitely here. She warns that the aura inside is far stronger than any successor they have met before. The Demon King dismisses that threat as just another illusion made by Ashwa. He declares that in this world there is nothing capable of stopping him. He strikes the tower without hesitation, triggering a violent system error. A critical failure occurs, and the system forcibly drags the group inside the tower. A purple pillar of light erupts over a distant martial sect as they are relocated. They arrive in the middle of a public execution, where a crowd is calling for a woman from the unorthodox faction to be killed for violating Jianghu law. A swordsman from the Namgun clan proclaims that, in the name of the orthodox faction, he will execute her. The system announces the first floor of the Tower of Heavenly Martial Arts and assigns a quest to intervene in the duel to the death and correct the morals of the Jianghu. Yuda is baffled that the tower throws them straight into a quest the moment they arrive. He is even more unsettled because the system is already broken, yet it still singled him out for this mission. Before he can make sense of it, the swordsman notices the intruders and demands to know who they are. The man accuses them of interfering in his sex duel to the death. Yuda can only stare, not understanding the situation at all. The swordsman denounces them as shameless for hiding the condemned woman behind them. He insists the woman invaded the clan's secret archive and tried to steal a sealed demonic martial arts manual. By his logic, the Namgun clan is simply enforcing Jianghu law with the sword. He stresses that this is not a harmless spar but a true duel to the death. He warns that anyone who interferes will be executed alongside the woman. Yuda is overwhelmed as the quest demands that he restore justice in a situation he barely understands. He protests inwardly that he cannot fix anything without first knowing what is really happening. Trying to reason it out, he concludes that every entering player must be assigned a specific quest. Otherwise, there would be no reason such a strange mission would suddenly be forced on him and the Demon King. For the moment, he decides the only option is to stop the duel somehow. But before he can act, the swordsman mocks their arrogance and advances. The Demon King answers the insult with open contempt and asks whether the man has a death wish. The swordsman is caught off guard by the sheer confidence in that reply. Yuda panics and begs the Demon King not to make the situation worse. The Demon King ignores the quest entirely and says he only cares about destroying the tower and taking the successor's power. He then turns the confrontation around and bluntly asks the swordsman whether he is the tower's successor. The question leaves the swordsman completely confused. Even the surrounding disciples cannot make sense of what the intruders are talking about. To them, the newcomers simply look deranged and strangely dressed. The swordsman laughs off the bizarre talk and regains his composure. He decides the intruders are not enemies from another sect, just madmen who have lost their minds. He mocks them as drunks who wandered in after too much cheap rice wine. With that judgment made, he tells them to leave while he is still being merciful. Instead, he lunges at the Demon King to drive him out by force. The Demon King meets the attack head-on with nothing but raw power. He warns that if they refuse to reveal where the successor's power is, he will kill everyone here. The swordsman tries to recover and strike again. The onlookers are stunned that a famed Namgun swordsman was repelled by brute force alone. They insist it must be impossible and assume their young lord simply let his guard down. But the swordsman himself realizes something is deeply wrong with that explanation. He knows that hiding one's presence so completely should only be possible for someone at the peak realm, which means this stranger may be far from ordinary. Even so, pride pushes him to praise the Demon King's strength while preparing to crush him properly. He sneers that brute force means nothing against true martial arts. He draws on the Namgun clan's swordsmanship and prepares to display it. He boasts that the Namgung's sword is the greatest blade under heaven. He unleashes the blue sky righteous sword art. Its second form descends in a lethal arc aimed straight at the Demon King. The Demon King answers with a single punch and shatters the attack. The impact tears up the courtyard and sends the swordsman flying. For a moment, everyone can only stare at the devastation in disbelief. The disciples look toward their fallen lord in horror. They cry out Namgung Jinhui's name in panic. Yuda is left speechless by how quickly the situation has spiraled out of control. Jinhui, bloodied and broken, can only rage that his clan's rising star was defeated by a nameless ruffian. Yuda realizes they have made things far worse instead of correcting anything. He decides he has to stop the Demon King before the disaster grows. He pleads with him to stop rampaging, warning that they will never clear the quest otherwise. Before he can finish, the system declares the quest failed. Because they failed to correct the morals of the Jianghu, the system returns them to the quest's starting point. Yuda is stunned to realize they have been rewound. The system restarts the first floor, confirming his fear that the quest will loop until they clear it. The mission to intervene in the duel and correct the morals begins again from the start. Back at the beginning, the three stand once more in the courtyard under the purple reset light. Even the Demon King is momentarily confused by what just happened. Jinhui, restored as if nothing occurred, is once again standing before them. The Demon King reluctantly accepts that they must clear the tower's quests if they want to advance. Yuda explains that ignoring the quest's direction causes time itself to rewind to the beginning. The Demon King realizes Yuda is referring to the blue command windows. Yuda seizes the chance and suggests they start by following the quest and correcting the morals as instructed. He argues that obtaining the successor's power will require clearing the quest first. Before they can settle on a plan, the reset scene repeats and Jinhui again demands to know who they are. The loop begins anew with the same accusation that they are sex scoundrels interfering in a duel to the death. After being forced to restart the quest because of the player, the protagonist reflects that he has learned one crucial lesson. When trying to stop a duel to the death, he realizes violence must be avoided completely. So he steps in and argues that they came all this way to resolve the duel's underlying misunderstanding, not simply let it end in bloodshed. He acknowledges Lord Namgung Jinhui's anger but insists the accused woman may have her own reasons and deserves to be heard first. Namgung Jinhui rejects that appeal at once, scoffing that there is no misunderstanding in a case involving a stolen demonic martial arts manual. He declares the woman a surviving member of the sinister Black Moon sect who trespassed into his clan's secret archive, and says her motives do not lessen her guilt. He escalates from refusal to threat, warning that anyone who interferes will be judged as sinners alongside her. Even under that pressure, the protagonist nervously keeps pushing, arguing that without hearing her out there is no way to set the situation morally right. As he desperately searches for a non-violent way to stop the duel, the player suddenly acts on his own and lunges in. Ignoring the plan entirely, the player charges straight toward the confrontation at full speed. The protagonist is horrified, realizing too late that the player is doing exactly what he was trying to prevent. The player openly refuses to obey the system's blue window commands, dismissing the protagonist's restraint. Instead, he decides that the Jianghu's morals will be corrected by force. His strike collides with the system's restrictions, triggering an error as the quest begins to break under his defiance. Smirking through the failure warning, the player insists he will impose his own justice even as the system declares that he has deviated from the quest path.